Hey, J-Bone Nation! Shaming of Jay. He's not a dopey dumb bitch. He gets laid. The court jester, the court DJ. It's time to dive into the case. To the case.
What is up, everybody? Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. What's up, everybody? How y'all
What's
doing?
up, guys? We are
Another
ready.
day.
Another day of Chad Daybell, but we are also keeping an eye on the Karen Reed jury selection, folks. So we'll keep you updated. It's not streaming, but we have a journalist. Thank you, Dizzy, who sent me that. I was just talking to Bob. You know, the judge told the folks could last 6 to 8 weeks, Bob. 6 to 8 weeks.
Shoo! It's a long one, Jay. It's a long one, but I think it'll be high drama. You know, it's like there's so many things at play with that particular case, man, that I just think it's going to be a banger. I think it's going to be a banger, as our dear friend Steve would say. It's
Absolutely.
It's going to be a good one, man.
Have you ever seen? I thought it was interesting that like the judge had to make a ruling where they can't have people close. Like there's like the
buffer zone, Jay.
Buffer zone. Have you ever seen that before?
No, never heard of it. It sounds very unconstitutional. Buffer zone sound very. She's telling people that they can't have signs and they can't, they can't do all the things that make us America around the courthouse. So, I don't know about the constitutionality of that. But, she's the judge. Judges can do whatever the hell they want to do.
And that's essentially because, like, she doesn't want jurors seeing people with free Karen Reed signs. Like, is that the idea? Like, she doesn't want them to have.
I think it's a combination of all kinds of shit. I think she doesn't want to have a circus. I think that she doesn't want the jurors being exposed to the chaos outside. But, look. Like if you remember OJ, man, the outside of that courthouse every day was insane. Like if we had a year, I'd say that we do that trial and just replay it because it was great. Did you watch OJ when it was like
I did not.
live?
I did not.
Oh my God, dude. Talk about it, that had everything. It had everything, and the judge had completely lost control of the court and the lawyers, and Ito was just, oh my God, it was unbelievable. And I think I was in college, so I was like skipping class, sitting there. It was like really the first trial that was ever streamed, and I couldn't take my eyes off of it because it was like. It was fascinating. It was so fascinating. And it was like really kind of the first time that we ever, as a society, got to really watch a trial from start to finish. And it was something else. I mean, you had like the biggest names in the criminal defense world. You had like, aside from Johnny Cochran, of course, you had like F. Lee Bailey.
Okay, let's go on the record on case CR
Right.
2221-1623,
We're starting,
State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. Continuing with the state's case in
Hey,
chief,
Guy.
we had a witness on the stand, Ms. Heidemann, yesterday that I believe will be continuing with testimony today. I'll note that the prosecutors are present as well as the defendant and defense counsel. Is the state ready to proceed with further evidence this morning?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and have the jurors brought in, please.
All right, Shannon tells the story all the time. Her mom would like record it, I think on like VHS or something during the day. Like they would watch that trial at night. They were like, that was like,
it was the greatest. It was the greatest trial, man. It was like, and I still didn't want to go to law school after that. I'm like, my dad was like, "Hey, you going to law school?" And I'm like, I don't know.
Okay, I won't touch
Seems
it.
like a horrible job. And then I watched that, riding around on my little, like I had a little Honda because I was down at college, and it was a great summer. That crazy dude. It was just the craziest case. It was like you had everything with Furman and him like being a racist, and like just them planting, the whole thing. It was like where you really kind of first got to see, live and in person, like where a defense is going after the investigation and insinuating that they were planting evidence, like they planted the glove. Right. You had the famous, if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. Like OJ making his hand real fat trying to get the glove.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God. It had everything. But yeah, it was like a who's who. Like that was the Kardashians. Like, I mean, he was, he was a lawyer, and, I think in LA, he was kind of well known, but like that just exploded. That whole Kardashian brand was born out of that case. You just had like every lawyer it was a who's who, because every lawyer wanted a piece of it. You know what I mean? It's like, it didn't matter if they were LA lawyers, they'd get admitted pro hoc vice, which is where you apply to the court to just try a case in a jurisdiction that you're not licensed to practice in. And yeah, it was something else, man. I was talking to Steve. I'm like, I don't know, man. That would be one hell of a long murder church trial, man. Go on forever.
All right.
It's so good.
Yeah, but I'm sure people would want to watch it though, if that's something he wants to do.
Especially people that didn't watch it, like.
Right.
And with him just dying right now, it's
right. Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. Day 4, I think. Is this day 4? Yeah.
It is. Yeah, we love you guys. Thanks for hanging with us.
The jury, the president.
Jay and I are both streaming.
All right, thank you. Please be seated.
Doing Twitter again, Jay?
Yep, I'm there too.
Yep, Twitter, and I also threw in Instagram. Oh, except I forgot.
Nice.
To go live. Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't know you could do that. That's awesome.
Yeah, for as much as
like I can't. Good morning, everyone. We're on the record on case CR 2221-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. The state is present.
Can we just call him? Can we just say "Hey, Guy" all the time?
Conducting direct of the witness yesterday, and we'll be continuing with the same witness this morning. Is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll note also the defense is present as well, the defendant and counsel, Mr. Pryor. The court will note, again, there is a courtroom conduct order in effect, and I appreciate those in attendance adhering to the terms of that courtroom conduct order. We did have a few members of the public yesterday that were not permitted to re-enter the courtroom later in the afternoon for not complying with that. Again, today, it will be in effect, and I appreciate everyone in the audience here following those admonitions in that order. In addition, I'll note that this trial is being live streamed. We are showing that directly through the court's official channel, which is the best signal if anyone is following the trial through that for public access. And no, we did confirm that the signal coming through off the court's website has the best quality if anybody's interested in following it that way. A few other things I'll note that the jurors are all present today. The court has received the declarations or acknowledgements that they followed the court's admonishing instructions. And so all are present and seated, and I appreciate you continuing to follow the court's admonition at the conclusion of trial each day. Ms. Heidman's on the stand at this point and is still under oath for testimony. And I will just inquire to make sure you didn't do anything to go back and review or look at any other testimony before returning today. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, thank you. So we'll conclude or continue then with direct examination of the witness. And as you testify, Ms. Blake and Ms. Heidman, please talk right into the microphone so we get a good, clear audio. And with that in mind, you can continue with your direct, Ms. Blake.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Heidemann, we left off yesterday going through phone attribution, but just since we had a break, will you remind the jury where you're employed?
The Federal Bureau of Investigation,
And what is your job title?
tactical specialist.
And in assisting with this investigation regarding the missing children, did that investigation ultimately expand into more than just missing children?
It did.
And what did it expand to include?
Into the deaths of Charles Vallow, JJ Vallow, Tylee Ryan, Tammy Daybell, and shooting attempts of Brandon Boudreaux and Tammy Daybell.
And as part,
Tammy, yes.
as part of your role in the investigation, were you tasked with looking at some Google searches done in association with a Gmail associated with Chad Daybell and a Gmail address associated with Lori Vallow?
Yes.
And did you in fact look at some searches that were conducted by both of those two,
Yes.
or their emails?
Their email account's correct.
And in looking through those, did you focus on a specific time date?
Yes.
And what was that?
In general, from October 2018 through January 2020.
And was it a similar time frame that you looked at in the phone attributions as well?
Yes.
In looking through those searches, did you prepare an exhibit today?
Yes.
Ooh, this
And
should
did
be
you
good.
prepare
Let's
that exhibit
bang the
based off
searches.
your searches and what you reviewed in relation to the evidence or discovery?
Yes, I did.
Do you believe that that would assist in your testimony today?
Yes,
And do you believe it would assist the jurors in understanding as well?
I do.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask that the witness be shown what's been marked as State's Exhibit 184A. I do have a copy for the court. I gave counsel a copy yesterday. Similar to the exhibit yesterday, there is actually a thumb drive that contains this actual exhibit, but these are printout slides from a PowerPoint.
Okay.
Yes, while they pull this up, folks, if you missed it, Shannon is in the air right now on the way to Kansas with Sloan. I already came back and found a note on,
And if you could
on
look
my
at those
washing
pages.
machine that said, it said, hold on,
Is that
it said, washer default is warm H2O, switch to cold to save energy / oil, which is good because we have a new
Aw.
washer and I didn't know that. So Babe already leaving me notes to try to handle this
Did
week.
she cook like 4 meals and put them in the
No.
freezer and leave you instructions? Preheat oven to 325 and cook for 40 minutes.
I don't know about you, Bob, but
Old-timey shit.
I don't do well without my other half when like not like I can handle doing wash and stuff. I just don't like not to have my babe with me. So she'll be
Dude.
back on Tuesday.
Same, bro. It's like
an
the
accurate
first day's kind of cool. You know, you're like, oh man, I can do whatever the fuck I want. Woo! And then, and then depression sets in. You're like, where's my bay? Where's my
Exactly.
bay? Bed's real
Exactly.
lonely. I'm begging the dog to come sleep with me. Like, come on, buddy. Come on, lay up here with daddy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Scout
and
usually will creep in, sleep on Allie's side. Yeah, it's I feel you, man. I feel you.
I'll give you a little
Definitely.
reference, Bob. I gave you a Shining reference yesterday. I'll give you another reference today. I was thinking what I could do this morning now that she's gone. I could put on the sunglasses, put on some Bob Seger, and then slide on the floor if folks get that reference. I don't know if people got my Shining reference yesterday.
What?
But
Risky Business
Risky
immediately?
Business. What
Are
a
you kidding me?
great movie. What a great movie
Dude,
Risky
it's
Business
one of the
was, man.
best of all time. Like
Seriously.
unequivocally the best of all. Like when that came out, I think I was 16, and it was like the greatest thing ever, man.
I
The
love that movie.
soundtrack was fire. That was before Tom Cruise like got sucked into Scientology, so he was just amazing. Dude, you had Booger. You
Booger,
had
yep.
man, the memo minder. Memo.
I think
Jay,
probably
sometimes you just have to say what the fuck. What the fuck
Yes,
brings
man.
opportunity. Dude, the whole
was that the moment. I think the best one. I'll stop and I'll go back to the court. But is that the moment? I think when he says that is when like the college recruiter is there and he's just like he sends the ladies in. I'm like, that's the best freaking moment, man.
Dude, it was so good. It was so I love that movie so much. And they had they played Swamp from the Talking Heads, like that was the scene when all the sex workers were coming in through the front door. And his buddy was like letting him in, and he kept shutting the door, and like another girl would come in and push the door open, and it was like that, hi, yeah, dude, like that. I watch that probably once a year. I always revisit it. Joel, get off the babysitter, Joel.
So, folks, if you're young, if you haven't seen that, that's our homework for you. Please. Check out
depiction of the PowerPoint that you put together.
It is.
And when we look at that, we talked about the time frame that you focused on. During the time you were looking at these searches, were the children still missing?
Yes.
And in part of what you were looking for, were you still focused on attempting to locate the children or learn information about them?
Yes.
Does this accurately reflect a summary of the searches that you pulled out as relevant at that point in time?
Yes.
Do you believe these are still relevant?
I do.
Your Honor, I would move for the admission of State's Exhibit 184A.
Judge, as a summary, there won't be any objection.
All right, 184A is admitted. And again, to be clear, that's not the printed off sheets. That will be the PowerPoint on a file contained on a thumb drive, correct, Ms. Blake?
Correct, Your Honor.
All right, it is admitted.
And I will say, while they bring this up, a lot of people echoing. I saw on the Twitter.com echoing Bob said.
And Your Honor, may I publish to the jury?
John Pryor's doing his job, and people, he's doing much better than Lori's attorneys. So a lot of people.
That was like, yeah, they didn't do anything. Like Allie, the challenge with that, because like going into us covering like the audio of that was like I said, they would release it every night, 6 p.m. like clockwork. It would drop all the testimony from that day. Allie, just being the amazing human she is, she would listen at like 1.5 speed, take like massive amounts of notes. She'd like mark the times of the things that were interesting that we would then pull from the sound and then put in the podcast, and then we'd discuss it, and we'd have our debates about, who was the puppet master? Was it Chad? Like those debates in and of themselves were like worth the price of admission, because it was like she was very much Chad initially, and I was very much Lori was running shit. But like it went so fast because the defense did nothing. Like they wouldn't cross-examine. Like, so the state was just blasting through their witnesses, and they were going through so many witnesses. And like when we had like Melanie Gibb or like Zulema, like who were fascinating witnesses, because they were really getting into like this whole thing that Lori and Chad had created, this like cult thing that they had done, which was, you know, like a version of LDS, Latter-day Saints, but they had bastardized it to their own, you know, to their own needs. And it was just, it was great. I hope that we get some of that, because it really, it makes for, like, this is boring. Like, we're going to see probably more cops today. We're going to get a lot more, like, we're obviously they're trying to get messaging in here, you know, so she's going to lay the foundation. We should get to see some of it, but we're still probably not going to get to the really juicy stuff. But like, just hang with us, kids. We'll get there. We'll get there.
We will.
But yeah, it's yeah, Pryor, I think is doing a good job, man, or at least doing his job.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I was thinking a moment. On this first slide, can you walk us through what we're seeing here?
Yes, this is a summary of search activity of interest observed in an account titled chad.daybell@gmail.com. We started the review on October 1st, 2018 through the end of the production when legal process ended.
This
do you
could be the
recall
first
approximately
damning
when that would have
evidence
been?
against
I
Chad.
don't remember off the top of my head what the search warrant dates were, no.
Is your recollection that they would have been around the same time as that phone attribution?
Probably pretty close, yes.
So again, when the children were still missing.
Correct.
And if we look at that first search there, and I say search, let me back up. When we look at the first date there, can you walk us through what those searches were?
Yes. On January 28th, 2019, there was searches for Ned Snyder, 1996 death, Louisiana. Ned Snyder, Louisiana. Ned Snyder, Louisiana, born 1951, died 1996. And bodies possessed after original occupant dies.
And in looking at that, there's some semicolons. Why are those there?
They were separate searches, or the way that the return comes in, it might have been a search and then visiting a site, for example. So I didn't separate out which ones. These just appear in the search history under different times, different searches, but on the same date.
So several searches done on the same date for Ned Schneider.
I mean, this is kind of interesting. So this is like they're getting into, he's researching these characters that he's giving to, like, this is kind of interesting that we're getting this information.
Yeah, it
Correct.
like, it's gonna start getting good.
Yeah,
Good old
all right.
Ned.
Ned Snyder.
Why
Here he
did
is.
that stick out to you?
Oakley Dokley.
That is connected to other portions of this investigation, wherein Charles Vallow makes a comment right around this time.
Judge, I'm going to object at this point.
Basis.
Well, it's hearsay, and in addition, Judge, there's no foundation to establish where this witness gained that information. So at the very least, I'd like some foundation. And then in addition, there's also a hearsay argument as well.
Okay.
It's sustained on grounds of hearsay. Calls for hearsay.
Thank you, Your Honor. As part of this investigation, we talked earlier that originally you get involved in looking for missing children.
Correct.
And at some point that expanded to include other acts.
Yes.
And you mentioned previously that one of those acts was the killing of Charles Vallow.
Correct.
Through your investigation, did you come to learn anything in relation to Charles Vallow and Ned Snyder?
Yes.
What did you learn in relation to the investigation?
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. There hasn't been sufficient foundation to establish how this witness learned of this information as it relates to Charles Vallow.
I will.
Investigation, did you review multiple documents?
I did.
Did you review multiple reports?
Yes,
Did you review phone data that was recovered?
I did.
In your review of reports and phone data, did you learn anything regarding the name Ned Schneider?
I did.
Did you learn of the importance of the name Ned Schneider?
Yes.
And what did you learn regarding the name Ned Schneider?
Judge, again, I'm going to renew my objection on the basis of foundation. The only reference to knowledge was from reports or documents that are unidentified if this witness is going to start relaying information about what she learned, I would think at least I'd be entitled to know what document she's referring to, where this information was gained from.
And Your Honor, may I respond?
Go ahead, Ms. Blake.
Your Honor, I think under the collective knowledge doctrine, she's already talked about it being a joint investigation, that she reviewed and discussed the matter. And in relation to hearsay, it's not coming in for the truth of the matter. It's coming in for why she does what she does and why it's relevant to her through the investigation.
I am going to overrule the objection and allow it to be answered at this point with sufficient foundation.
Thank you. What did you learn in relation to the relevance of Ned Snyder and Charles Vallow?
In reviewing police reports from Chandler Police Department and body cam footage, I believe from Gilbert Police Department, Charles Vallow makes comments that his wife, Lori Vallow, was referring to him as variations on the name Ned Schneider. Additionally, the name Ned and variations of the name Ned Schneider appear in Lori Vallow's iCloud accounts, again, in reference to Charles Vallow.
And then there's also one on there, bodies possessed after original occupant dies. What was it about that that stood out to you?
The concept of possession is sort of prevalent through this investigation. This is, I believe, the first time we start seeing it, wherein Charles Vallow has become possessed by an entity named Ned. So
Good old Ned.
Again, I spoke yesterday about there being a lot of aliases in this case with Chad and Lori, but also with some of the victims in this case where they are possessed by entities and therefore then being referred to by these names, Ned being one of them for Charles.
And then the next search on there, can you read the date and what that search was?
January 31st, 2019, Ned Schneider, Louisiana, obituary 1997.
And did that stand out to you for the same reasons you've just explained?
It did.
And then the next one on there, can you read that and what the date and what the search was?
March 6th, 2019, June 26th, star sign, are Cancer and Leo compatible? May 4 sign, Taurus and Leo compatible.
And when we're looking at this one, what stood out about this particular search?
Lori Vallow's birthday is June 26th, making her a Cancer. May 4th was Tammy's birthday, making her a Taurus. And Chad Daybell's birthday is August 11th, which makes him a Leo. And then the search of the compatibility between those signs.
And on March 6th of 2019, do you know if Tammy Daybell was still alive?
She was.
And you indicated Chad and Lori had met approximately when?
October 26, 2018.
And looking at the next search, can you read the date and talk a little bit about that one?
May 5th, 2019, Malachite and eBay Malachite jewelry.
And what stood out about that to you?
Chad and
Wedding
Lori
ring.
eventually ended up purchasing malachite stone wedding bands.
And again, May 5th, was Tammy still alive?
She was.
What stood out about, or excuse
What do you
me,
think of that
on the
there,
next
Jay?
one, can you say the date and
Well, I was just thinking, yesterday you asked me, what would be my thought when we watched kind of the body cam, and like it was. Now we're starting to get into like their research and shit before their significant others are dead, buying wedding rings, and it's fascinating to me. Like I thought he just picked the fucking name Ned Schneider. Like he's googling horoscopes and he's googling names. Like he did a lot of research into this. So I don't know if this came out before, but to me that's really interesting.
Yeah, all this shit came out before, and like, but it's not only, it's like obituaries. Like, so because every demon or dark spirit, when somebody would be on the darkness scale, like he would give the demon a name or the dark spirit a name. So, and Charles was obviously Ned Schneider, but as this progresses, when he decides what the names are, it's all based on research, and he's always picking somebody that was, of course, deceased. Yeah, it gets sorted, man. I mean, it's like, this is how they're going to build the case against him circumstantially. The
Right.
fact that his wife, is still alive and well. And he's already searching for and ultimately purchasing wedding bands. Pretty damning.
How do you
Jay.
explain that away, man?
Tough
What
one.
that search
Tough
was.
one.
June 1st, 2019, Iplos.
And what caught your attention with regard to that search?
In reviewing the iCloud data and seeing text messages, it becomes apparent that Hiplos is another entity name for Charles Vallow, replacing Ned.
It's like,
So
that
both
Ned
Ned
one's
Schneider
not so good.
and Hiplos
Not
or
good,
Iplos are
Ned.
names associated with Charles Vallow.
Correct.
And on June 1st of 2019, do you know if Charles Vallow was still alive?
He was.
How about the next search, the date and that search?
July 9th, 2019, when you surprise someone with accusations.
What caught your attention in relation to that search?
That search was conducted 2 days before Charles was shot and killed.
And then the next one, the one on September 8th, 2019, if you could talk about that search.
SSW wind, and what is the definition of SSW direction?
What caught your attention with that wind search?
That search occurred the last day of Tylee Ryan's sighting, and we believe she was burned and buried on his property the following day.
We talked a little bit before, there were other searches in relation to this email. Is that accurate?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
In your review of those, were there any other searches for wind direction?
Not that I saw.
So this was not a common search done by or associated with this email address?
No.
Yet another
And
thing.
then
I can
the
explain
last
that
one on there,
away.
if you could say the date and what that one is.
October 8th, 2019, Rhode Island area code.
And what was it about this search that drew your attention?
As mentioned yesterday, there were numerous phones involved in this investigation. On October 8th, 2019, the 401 number we spoke about yesterday was activated, which is the 401 is the area code for Rhode Island.
And as you said, we talked about that one yesterday. And is that one that Chad had let Lori know he was going to text her from that 401 number?
That's correct.
And did that occur around this same date?
I believe it was the day after. Yeah, it was. I think there was an issue setting up the actual account. So it was the 9th, I believe, that he texted from his known number to Lori saying he would call from a 401.
And then if we move to the next slide, can you talk a little bit about what we're seeing on this slide?
Again, it's a summary of search activity of interest observed in the lollytimeforever@gmail.com account from March 7th, 2019 through December 14th, 2019.
I wish we could see.
And that lollytimeforever@gmail,
I know.
did you determine who the associated user is?
Lori Vallow.
And on this first search, can you talk about what we're seeing there?
May 7th, 2019, malachite.
I think you've already talked about the malachite. I believe you said that's a stone that was that ended up in Chad and Lori's wedding bands or wedding
That's
rings.
correct, yes.
And when we look at the date there, was that date significant to you?
May 7th?
Well, I guess let me ask it this way. On May 7th, was Tammy still alive?
Yes, both Charles and Tammy were still alive at this point.
Objection leading.
And the next search, if you could talk about the date and what that one is.
July 21st, 2019, Gerber Life Policy, Life Insurance for Children, the Grow Up Plan.
Oh my man.
And what was it about that search that stood out?
We found it of interest seeing how children were missing and she was searching for life insurance for children.
And to be clear, through the investigation, did you ever determine if life insurance had been purchased for the children?
No, we did not.
And to the best of your knowledge, there was no life insurance?
No.
And the next search there and the date?
July 26, 2019, Phoenix Pet Services, Craigslist, Self-Service Dog, Little Angel Service Dogs for Sale, and Offer Up Phoenix.
And there's several searches there,
Correct.
and they appear to be in relation to a service dog.
That's correct.
Why did that stand out to you in this case?
JJ had a service dog at the time, and this search occurred roughly 2 weeks after the death of Charles Vallow. So to attempt to sell a service dog for a child after the death of his father seemed of interest to us.
Yeah.
And again, to be clear, JJ was still alive on July 26th.
He was, yes.
And
You're
the
serious.
next search there?
August
selling
25th, 2019, wedding bands made of malachite.
And I think we've talked a little bit about this. Did that stand out to you for the same reason?
It did, although at this point, Charles Vallow is no longer alive.
Was Tammy Daybell still alive?
She was.
And the next search?
September 20th, 2019, Kennedy Elementary, Rexburg, Idaho phone number and define possess.
And then if we also look at that next search, can you read the date on that one?
September 24th, 2019, Kennedy Elementary, Rexburg, Idaho phone number.
So for both the September 20th and September 24th, looking at that common search for the Kennedy Elementary phone number, why did that catch your attention?
We believe that JJ died around the 22nd, 23rd. So these searches would have bookended that death.
And do you know where JJ was enrolled in school around the time of his death?
At Kennedy Elementary in Rexburg, Idaho.
And on the 20th, there was that one additional search, define possess. What was it about that stood out?
Similarly to the first Ned Schneider searches that also included that possession, the concept of possession and deaths sort of going hand in hand was of interest.
And this search occurred 2 to 3 days before, or I guess 2 to 3 days before JJ's last seen alive.
That's correct.
And then
Oh
if
my
we move
God.
down to the September 30th one, can you talk a little bit about that?
How to get the back seat out of my Jeep Wrangler. Jeep Wrangler JK rear seat removal, how to DIY.
Wow.
Yeah. Rear seat removal, how to DIY -YouTube.
And it looks like there's essentially two searches there.
The way that it's written, it looks like it was probably a search and then clicking on like a YouTube link to show this,
Okay.
if I remember correctly.
And what was it about that stood out to you?
Tylee Ryan had a Jeep Wrangler as her everyday car. At this point, she is no longer alive, or her last proof of life has passed. On September 30th, well, on October 2nd, Brandon Boudreau is shot at from a Jeep Wrangler, from somebody in the back seat or the rear area of a Jeep Wrangler in Arizona. So the search of how to get the back seat out of my Jeep Wrangler by Lori, who has access to a Jeep Wrangler. Alex Cox is believed to have been the one that attempted to shoot Brandon Boudreau, who would have had access to this Jeep Wrangler. Additionally, on October 2nd, there's a video of a storage unit in Idaho where Chad and Lori are on surveillance video storing a tire, like a spare tire, and what looks like the back seat of a Jeep or some sort of vehicle in a storage unit just a few days after this search.
And then if we move to the next search.
October 2nd, 2019, Gilbert, Arizona News.
What stood out about that search?
Brandon Boudreau was shot at in Gilbert, Arizona on October 2nd.
And then the final search on here?
October 22nd, 2019, wedding dresses in Kauai.
And why did that search or those searches draw your attention?
The search was, again, wedding planning, and then also it's just days after Tammy's death and the same date as her funeral.
And when you say just days after Tammy's death, do you know the day Tammy was pronounced dead?
October 19th, 2019.
So just 3 days after Tammy's death.
That's correct.
No, that's okay.
And you also indicated this search was done on the same day as Tammy's funeral?
That's correct.
Do you know if Chad and Lori ultimately ended up getting married?
They did.
Do you know approximately when?
In early November.
If I may have just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Blake. Mr. Pryor,
Powerful witness.
cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge.
That was, I mean, I guess we'll see how he tries to make this look better, but man, I don't know how you can. Talking to the mic, dope.
Oh, look, we can see the.
Tactical
I like
specialist
that
is my
they switched the cameras around.
Oh yeah,
So
that's right. We could see
Better.
him in there.
So now we can see. Yeah, that's better. That's better.
Tiny defense attorney.
Title. TS if it's easier.
Mr.
Except
Pryor,
for the
your
only thing that looks
microphone's not
huge is
working.
Chad's
Sorry.
head. I can see that perfectly.
Anytime on any view, his head looks
It's
massive.
huge. You're huge,
Judge,
noggin.
Blake pulled one on me here.
Okay.
Turned off the phone, microphone. So you're not a, so how would you like me to refer to you again? I'm sorry.
Tactical specialist is my title.
Okay. Is there an easier, so
TS or
T.S. Heidemann, would that be fair?
that works, yes.
Okay. Okay. So,
You seem sweet, this cop.
T.S. Heidemann, it sounds from your testimony that you've spent a considerable amount of time going over the evidence in this case.
That's correct, sir.
And you've familiarized yourself with a variety of topics. Those would include what happened in Arizona, right? What happened with Brandon Boudreaux?
Correct.
Okay, and what has happened here in terms of the facts and information? You spent a bit of time, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So you're also aware that Chad Daybell is not implicated criminally in the death of Charles Vallow, Lori Vallow's fourth husband, correct?
That's correct.
And you're also aware that Chad Daybell is not criminally implicated in the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux in where Brandon Boudreaux was shot, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So before I get into the gist of what I'm going to talk to you about, I noticed that there's an FBI representative in the court today,
Babe's getting on a plane. Love you, babe.
and
We
that
love
he
you,
has been
Shan.
here
Safe
on a
travels.
number of occasions watching the testimony. I can't attest to the specific number, but I know he's been here several times. Is that your officer supervisor that's here supervising your testimony?
He's not my direct supervisor, but I do work with him, yes.
Okay, so what is he here for?
Observation,
Okay.
just to observe the,
And at any time prior to your testimony, did you discuss with this FBI person anything you were going to say today, since he's been watching the testimony for several days?
we have not discussed it in, I mean, he's been a part of the investigation for quite a while, so he knows of it, but we haven't discussed in detail what I'm testifying to now.
And I appreciate you saying it that way. When you say he hasn't discussed it with me in detail, what I really want to know is he discussed it with you at all in any regard, in any capacity since
Pryor's on top of this
since
shit,
this trial
dude.
started.
Your Honor, I'm going to object on relevance and beyond the scope of direct.
Oh,
All
it's
right. Well,
relevant.
the issue goes to the exclusionary order, and we need to just get to that point, Mr. Pryor, as to whether or not you believe there's been any violation of that.
And in essence, Judge, what I'm asking is whether she's in any regard spoken to that representative of the FBI about this case.
You can ask the question.
That's the question I'm asking, Judge.
About this case, yes, we have spoken about this case
And when did you speak?
over the last 4 years,
Okay.
4.5 years.
Did you speak in the last week during the testimony of this case?
Possibly.
Ooh,
I don't
that's
remember
not a
off the
good
top of my
answer.
head
What
if
do you
we
mean you
had
don't know?
any
The past
other
week,
than
you don't know?
if I was going to testify or
Okay.
timing.
And what I'm concerned about is this, is that he's not your direct supervisor, right?
That's correct.
And there's no need to report to him, right?
It's a co-situation. I don't necessarily need to report to him, but I do, as a courtesy, I am on his squad, but I have a different direct supervisor. So as a courtesy,
Here,
I like to let
pause
him
it
know
real
if I'm
quick.
in the office
All
or
right.
not. Yes.
And I'm going to move on.
All right, so Simi Sharp had asked, why is he taking issue with the FBI dude? So what they have in most trials is that they either call it, they sequester witnesses, or they have an exclusionary rule, which means that people that are going to be testifying will not be sitting in the courtroom hearing any testimony that precedes them. Once they testify, they typically, if they choose, if they want to, they can sit in the courtroom and listen. And the issue is what Pryor's trying to bring up right now. And this was a big issue in Lori's case. Like I was telling Jay yesterday, Simi, there were at least 2 witnesses, probably the most damaging in terms of, I mean, ultimately it didn't matter with the verdict, but was Lori's niece, Melanie, who had made admissions that she was listening to the audio of the testimony. So she didn't have to be in the courtroom, and she made admissions that she was listening to it, because what you worry about is that people that are in the courtroom, and this person that she works with the feds, who's not her superior, has been in the courtroom every day for the first 3 days of the trial. And if he is relaying information to this witness of anything that has been testified to, it's in violation of the exclusionary rule. So he's delving into that because this guy apparently has been sitting in there all 3 days. She has not been. So that's what they're kind of getting into. If it turns out that it's violating the exclusionary rule, I mean, what was happening in Lori's case is the judge was not allowing them to testify. So it was like I said, ultimately it did not have an impact on the verdict there. But, you know, the state certainly doesn't want to be losing witnesses, and it just creates a whole bunch of other shit. And when we get a little break, Jay, Lori Hellis, our boots on the ground, sent me a rather lengthy text about kind of what this hearing that's coming up on the 18th is about. And it's interesting. She'd asked me not to read it verbatim, so I'll give like a general gist of what she believes that it's about. And it's pretty interesting. So, but hopefully, Simi, that answered the question.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob. And that's why, you know, when you're watching with us, you have an attorney, over 20 years experience breaking it down for you. Also, we have boots on the ground in the courtroom with Lori Ellis, who is awesome. So thanks for watching with us. We hope you guys
we love you guys.
We love you guys. Yeah.
I just wanted to actually, part of that was the judge's exclusionary rule and whether or not you folks are communicating about this case. And your answer is maybe a little bit, but not in any significant way, right?
Not in any significant way, not beyond what we've talked about in the last 4+ years now.
And even though this FBI officer isn't your direct supervisor, you're just talking in general about this case, right?
I can't say in the last week or so if we have or not. Any details? Nothing that stands out, no.
Okay, so you don't remember whether you talked to somebody or not in the last week about a very important case in your life. Is that what you're telling me?
Your Honor, I'm going to object as argumentative and asked and answered.
Sustained.
Okay. Now, you identified that you were looking into attribution information and looking for Google searches as it related to this case, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, now you know the circumstances regarding J.J. Vallow's death, correct?
As much as I can.
Much as you can,
Yeah.
right. And you have an approximate date as to when you believe J.J. Vallow was killed, right?
Correct.
And what date was that?
Well, the last proof of life was September 22nd, 2019 in the morning. We have a photo that date, so somewhere between then and approximately September 23rd.
All right, so the afternoon of September 22nd until the morning of September 23rd, correct? Is that fair?
Yeah, morning, early afternoon, correct? Yes.
Morning, early afternoon of September 23rd.
I don't remember the exact time.
Oh, it's
but yes,
okay.
those time frames.
Well, this is a problem. Our court reporter is never going to be able to keep up when you're talking at the same time and you're both actually doing it. So please wait for an answer, wait for a new question, and don't talk over each other. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You tell him, Judge
So if
Burt.
and please don't let me misrepresent your testimony. You believe that J.J. Vallow was murdered the afternoon of September 22nd up until either late morning or sometime early September 23rd, correct?
That's correct.
And at the time, are you aware of the 4 people who were around J.J. Vallow at that specific time?
What four people? I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get to. You're aware that J.J. Vallow was allegedly murdered either in an apartment of Lori Vallow's or a close proximity to that. You agree with that, right?
I don't know that we know exactly where he was killed. No.
Okay. But you do know that J.J. Vallow was being watched by Alex Cox that day and that evening of the 22nd, correct?
Partially, yes.
Okay. And you know that Melanie Gibb was there on the evening of the 22nd at Lori Vallow's apartment, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And you know that David Warwick was there on the 22nd on the evening of the day or the day that J.J. Vallow was murdered, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so we have Lori Vallow, correct? On that day?
Yes.
Alex Cox on that day, correct?
Correct.
Melanie Gibb on that day, correct?
Correct.
David Warwick on that day, correct?
Correct.
So I'm having some difficulty with you bringing up these Google searches. And this is why I'm having some difficulty is you're talking today about searching these people's and talking about events, and we'll get to these events in a minute. I don't see any Google searches on Melanie Gibb or David Warwick. And why is that?
Your Honor, I'm going to object as argumentative.
Overruled.
Why don't I have any Google search information on Melanie Gibb or David Warwick?
I'm not aware if, I don't know off the top of my head if any legal process was served on those individuals or not.
Well, and this is what I'm having some difficulty with. This is what I'm struggling with.
Your Honor, objection to the narrative. If he wants to ask a question.
I'll sustain that. Just
Okay.
questions, Mr. Pryor.
Okay. Well, if David Warwick and Melanie Gibb were present for the murder of J.J. Vallow, why aren't we looking into their Google searches?
I don't actually write the search warrant, sir, so
Okay.
I'm not sure if they were who would have done that.
Okay. But it's common knowledge that they were at least there, right?
For a partial time, yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you're also aware as part of your investigation that, and we can discuss when we think this took place, but Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow were having a relationship, correct?
Yes, sir.
And they were engaged in a romantic relationship.
Yes, sir.
And it may have been when Charles Vallow was alive. It may have been after that, but we do know that after Charles Vallow's death, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell were in a relationship.
That's correct.
And Chad was still married to Tammy Daybell at that time, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When someone's in a relationship and you're looking at Google searches, could some of these Google searches be explained that he's trying to hide his extramarital affair with Lori Vallow?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand the.
Well, let me go over it this way. You saw on 3/6 of 2019, May 6th of 2019. Would you like me to put this up so we can look at this? Would that be easier for you?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh. Now tell me how I operate this. That's going to be a problem.
Which exhibit is this?
Judge, I don't have the number on it. It was
caveman
what
lawyer.
Ms. Blake was just
Caveman
talking
lawyer
to as
routine.
part of the attribution. And the
I don't
Googles.
understand
That
your
184A?
modern world.
I think so.
Okay,
How do I work
184A,
with
then I'll
machine?
note, not the PowerPoint, but the printout
Put the fucking
copy
thing
can be
underneath the
displayed
display
to
and it
the
shows it
witness
prior.
I
and
don't
published for
understand that.
cross-exam.
Does it magically put the thing on the thing? What? How does
And
this
please
work?
excuse me. At my age, technology is
Oh
is
God,
just
here we
getting
go. Yes, we get it.
hooked up to
I don't
Bluetooth is a challenge
understand
for
your
me.
modern world.
So we're looking at 3/6 of 2019, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Now, before I start, one of the things I have some difficulty with is
Me too, Missy.
we don't know who did these Google searches, right?
Correct. I cannot say that I witnessed Chad Daybell type these into a search bar, but somebody with access to the Chad Daybell account
So if there was,
conducted searches, yes.
It wasn't
Judge,
Tammy.
I'll pause. I'm
Wasn't
sorry.
Tammy there, John Pryor?
The next question's already in my head, and it's just getting it to spit out, and I'll try to control myself a little bit. So you put this off of a computer at Chad Daybell's house, right?
I reviewed a search warrant return from Google is what I
Okay.
was looking at, so not the computer directly, no.
So other than the time when Tammy Daybell passed away, are you aware that there were 3 or 4 other people who were living in Chad Daybell's house at the time?
I don't know. I think at least one child, but there could have been more. It's possible,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. So we don't know who actually did these searches, right?
Or I don't know from what device these were searched, no. I mean, it could have been a phone. You could be logging into from different devices, correct?
Okay. So I want to start, and we'll deal with the Ned Schneider ones in a minute here. 3/6/2019. Tammy Daybell's still alive, right?
Yes.
Now, I'm looking at that, and that on 3/6/2019, Chad Daybell was already in this relationship with Lori Vallow, right?
Correct.
So, and I don't want you don't have to say what you're thinking, but it looks like June 26 star sign are Cancer, Lead compatible, and Leo compatible. And also May 4 sign Taurus and Leo compatible. That's what that is, right?
Correct.
And what your testimony said is that it looks like someone's trying to see whether, if we assume that it's Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell in the Cancer and Leo, right? That's what you're sort of implying to this jury, isn't it?
Well, based on the birth dates, May
Right.
4th and June 26th, correct? Yes.
Okay. And based on the birth dates, May 4th of Taurus and Leo compatible as well, right? On March 6th.
Yes.
So if someone is trying to find out and is involved in an extramarital relationship, and you're Googling whether or not your current spouse or your new girlfriend are compatible, that would be a reasonable explanation, would it not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then we go back and look at the malachite, eBay malachite jewelry on May 5, right?
Correct.
Okay. And if you're talking to
Jay, pause that for 1 second.
someone that you're having,
Did he just ask if he was trying to Google whether or not Tammy and Lori would be compatible? Did he just ask that question?
Let me check.
or your new girlfriend are compatible,
Yeah, that's
and you're Googling whether or not your current spouse or your new girlfriend are compatible, that would be a reasonable explanation, would it not?
With each
Yes,
other
sir.
Okay.
or with
I-
him?
And then we go back and
I think with him, that would be a reasonable explanation. He's having an affair. I mean, I don't.
I mean,
look at
we
the
like
Malachite.
Mormons do, you know, I mean, there is some polygamous factions of Mormons, but I don't know if that's where you, all right, sorry. I just,
Let's see.
I
That's
had
all right.
to-
No, let's see where he's going, because I think we're all trying to figure out where he's going with this.
Bay Malachite jewelry on May 5, right?
Correct.
Okay. And if you're talking to someone that you're having an extramarital affair, and they encourage you to say, oh, you know, someday maybe we could be together. I love malachite. And she starts dropping hints. That could be an explanation for that as well, right?
It could, but I believe that Chad's malachite searches began before Lori's.
Oh, yeah, but I understand the searches.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I understand that. But why don't you show me the phone records where they talked about malachite and that Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell discussed the issue of malachite? Did you see any of those?
I can't remember if they were in any text messages or not, but ultimately they purchased wedding bands that were malachite wedding bands. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And were you also aware that during this time, there was discussion with Alex Cox and Zulema Pastenes about malachite as well?
I don't remember off the top of my head. No, sir.
Okay. All right. So we don't know whether this search for malachite was a discussion between a boyfriend and a girlfriend, or whether or not it was about Alex Cox and his future marriage to Zulema Pastenes, right?
Objection, Your Honor. States facts not in evidence and argumentative.
Sustained.
Now, the Ned Schneider issue. Again, when was Charles Vallow murdered by Lori Vallow and Alex Cox?
July 11th, 2019.
Okay. So there was a discussion about this, and the first time you ever heard about Ned Schneider was when Charles Vallow brought it up in an audio recording about his wife at the time, correct?
I believe that's correct, somewhere in early January.
And the date of that was when?
I don't have the exact date of the body cam recordings or the police reports, but it's I believe it's pretty close to this time frame.
Prior to that time frame, right?
Yeah, right in that general time frame.
Okay. So, and in that general time frame, there was a discussion of Ned Schneider, right?
Yes, sir.
And at that point, it's your position that Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell were involved in an extramarital affair at that point.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you happen to look into the fact that Charles Vallow and Lori Vallow called off their divorce and tried to reconcile their marriage in February of 2019?
Yes, I do remember that. I don't remember the time frame, but that sounds probably pretty close. Yeah.
You don't remember exactly when in February, but they did attempt a reconciliation and basically tried to renew their relationship, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the idea of Ned Schneider, you didn't see anything else in Chad Daybell prior to January 28th of 2019, did you?
Did I see anything
With Ned Schneider and Chad Daybell making any look into what Ned Schneider was all about, right? Prior to this?
No, this was, I believe, was the first search, at least in this time frame,
Okay.
that Ned Schneider appeared in Chad's Google searches.
Okay. So at that point, we can't make any assumptions, obviously, right?
No.
Okay. But we do know that as far as you're concerned, on the 28th of January 2019, somehow Chad Daybell learned about the topic of Ned Schneider and decided to do a Google search and see what that was all about, right?
Objection, Your Honor. Misstates the testimony.
Overruled. You can answer.
I don't know if he learned of it or if he was doing searches. He did searches for various individuals pretty frequently.
Right.
This is the only one that we found that had connection to other pieces of evidence in the case.
And you just led into my next question, and thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Because
when I reviewed all of this evidence, I saw that it was not uncommon when a topic came up for someone who was using that computer to do a search on a number of different topics. That would be fair, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay. So if he were to learn about the name Ned Schneider, it would be consistent with his or whoever was using that computer to Google it and see what it was all about. Would that be fair?
Potentially, I can't speak of when he learned that name or if he was
Okay.
searching it like he was a lot of other names. I'm not sure the order of that, no.
But his history shows that there's a lot of inquiry into various names, various topics, and that was something that was going on that computer quite frequently. Hundreds of thousands of searches, right?
Certainly lots of searches, yes.
Right. And then we go down to Malachite, and we don't know where he got the name Malachite from, but then he started searching that as well, right?
Correct.
And then he got to Hiplos, and we don't know what the story is on Hiplos, but he typed in that name, so he must have got the name from somewhere and started as that, right?
Correct.
And then you get down to 7/19 of 2019. Now, when you say you surprise someone with accusations, we don't know who typed that in, right?
Again, somebody, I can't say specifically, but somebody with access to the chad.daybell@gmail.com account.
So it could be someone's trying to learn about how you react when a spouse finds out that you're cheating on her, right?
Yes, it could be.
Okay. And we don't know who did the south-southwest wind and what is the definition of that, right?
Again, all I can say is it was somebody with access to that account.
Right. And when you're talking about the day before the accusation is, or the prosecutors claiming that may have been the day that Kylie Ryan was put in the ground on 9/9, but you're also aware that on 9/9, Chad Daybell sent an email to his wife at the time, Tammy Daybell, and said, "I'm going to burn some limbs in the backyard," the next day, right?
I believe that text message was sent on the 9th that he said he
Right.
wanted to burn, yes,
Yeah.
limbs, yeah.
Right. So on the 8th, he's checking the wind. And on the 9th, he sends an email to his wife saying, "I'm going to burn some limbs in the backyard." Right?
Correct.
Okay. And then Rhode Island area code. Now, you don't know what kind of phones we're dealing with. These aren't like track phones, are they? Or do you know what kind of phones these are?
I believe they might actually be track phones.
Go ahead.
No, that's,
Oh, you believe they are all track phones, right?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I mean, so track phone is kind of a provider. So if you're asking like, is it an iPhone or an Android? I'm not,
Right.
yeah.
But the track
It's a
phone, the way
burner.
that works, and if you don't know, please tell me if you don't have knowledge of this, but the way the track phone works is you buy the phone for a period of 90 days. It expires and you can either buy another phone rather inexpensively, or you have to buy the adding the minutes thing. And there's no real discernible difference in the cost, right?
Oh,
Correct.
so
Yeah, you can
John
keep the phone
Pryor
and change the
understands
number.
track phone technology. He's not that much of a unfrozen caveman lawyer. Let me tell you a little something about track phone. So you buy it and it goes for 90 days. So I had seen a couple comments real quick. Akasha, I feel what you're saying, but just like, so John Pryor's actually crushing this, and whether or not he's making points with the jury is an entirely different thing. But like, say for instance, if Alice and I are sitting there in court as defense counsel and we're listening to the direct examination, anything that we feel that the state may have made a point on, you know, we're noting it for our cross examination that we have to try to address it, to try to counteract it. So I mean, you guys can't be sweating this dude for like doing his job. It's literally what his job is. And I know that you said, you know, he's doing his job, but he's actually doing it pretty effectively. Now, like, is anybody buying the fact that he's burning limbs as being a plausible explanation when it so happens that we know that both of the kids were, you know, we know what happened with them with respect to the bodies. So, you know, at the end of the day, but he's going to go through, like with every witness. The one thing that we're going to see throughout this trial is he is going to, anything that he felt the state made a point on, he is going to attempt to try to counter. Now, whether or not we think it's total bullshit, which most of the time we will, because it is total bullshit, he's still got to do it. You know, I mean, otherwise he's ineffective in terms of his job. And we don't want defense attorneys or the prosecutor to be ineffective, because that ultimately down the road, when appeals start happening, can lead to retrials. So as much as it might irritate people, like, just kind of like understand that this dude's job is to do exactly what he's doing. And frankly, I think he's a highly competent lawyer. Like, and I don't find him to be condescending at all with the witnesses.
That's
I
where I'll
think
disagree with you, Bob. My opinion is he's a condescending prick, but I think he's doing a good. I think he's
like, in
doing his
what
job.
sense?
He
Like, give me
talks
an
down to
example.
people. When he does it, I'll bring it up. But there's
Yeah,
moments
point it
where
out,
he's
because I haven't
he
seen
like
it yet.
to me he appears like he's like just the way he would like say certain things, like during voir dire, he'd be like he would be like, there's no wrong answer here, there's no like, it just, there's certain things that he would repeat to me that he came off as condescending. Some other folks think so, but some other folks might not. Maybe that's just, to me, he comes off condescending. But I guess we'll if I while it's going on, if I'll let you know when I think. But if you
Yeah,
don't, I mean, everyone,
it's like
go ahead.
defensive to, like, we're hyper sensitive to how we're coming off to a jury. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes you'll get sucked into a moment, but I mean, more than anything, like, every lawyer in that room knows that they are trying to have the jury like them. You know what I mean? So, like, typically, you know, and if you have a situation where you've got a witness who you feel has done a ton of damage, and you know, you're going in like, all right, I gotta kind of go hard at this witness to try to mitigate the damage that was done. You know, you go into that cross-examination understanding that you may piss the jury off, you know, because like everyone is like hypersensitive to how, you know, people speak to one another. But just remember, a court of law and cross-examination of a witness is not every day speaking to somebody. This isn't John Pryor having a
Well,
conversation with somebody over lunch. You know what I'm saying? It's like
I get that, but like, for
like,
example,
it's antagonistic is what I'm saying. It's like cross-examination's exactly what it sounds like. It's an antagonistic relationship between the witness and the defense lawyer or the prosecutor. I mean, you'll see the prosecutor go hard at defense witnesses. It goes both ways, you know?
no, I totally agree. But like, for example, with James Crumbly, like, I thought she did a great job. And she would like, but like, I felt like she was, this guy to me, he bothers me. And I'll bring up points
You
if I
find
think
him
that
to
he's
be a
doing.
pompous windbag. That's fair.
I kind of do. Like, and I really liked, I don't want people to think like it's because I'm like, not like, I just think all defense attorneys should. Obviously, I'm that Bob. My first guest was Christine Long, Zach Late. Like, I get it, but to me, he just comes off like he thinks he's better than people. But
I
maybe,
haven't seen him like, you know, I think that people have kind of a general perception of lawyers in general as being kind of pompous windbags. Like, my entire career, people were always like surprised that I was a lawyer because I'm not a pompous windbag, you know, and I don't come off like I'm like super smart guy and, oh, well, I know this and you don't seem to know that. Let me educate you. You know what I mean? So like, I think that it kind of as a general rule, people think that lawyers are kind of douchey just because of the nature of the business. You know, but like, I'm gonna
yes,
watch carefully. Like, and if I think, if I agree with you, if I think that he's coming off as a condescending douche, I'll absolutely say that. Like, you know, like, I am in no way, shape, or form, like, every individual is just that. Like, this is just their job. If the guy's a condescending douche in real life, then he's a condescending douche. You know what I mean? So like,
yeah.
but I
I
just
mean,
haven't seen it yet. And like, lawyers act differently in pretrial motions, which I know that you were watching. Remember, he wasn't in front of a jury. So the way
no, he
that a
was.
lawyer
It was voir dire. He was pick of the jury.
oh, but you also watched some of the pretrial hearings, right?
Not really. I learned about this
I
guy
thought you
from.
watched
Oh
I
yeah,
thought
actually,
you
yeah, you're right. We did. You're right. I'm sorry. You're right. We did watch those. Yes,
yeah,
you're right.
and like, he may have like set the tone for you in your mind there.
Could be. Could
So,
be.
because like, to me, all that matters in front of a jury is how he's acting in front of a jury, not anything that precedes it. Because when I'm arguing and I have no jury present and it's a pretrial motion, I'm a much different person in terms of visibility with respect to me arguing to the judge. Whereas I know I've got a jury impaneled and they're watching everything that you do and they're listening to every word you say and they're judging you the whole time. So it's just interesting. Let's keep an eye on it, but I'm certainly going to look for it.
I'm going to push it back a little bit of this on Ada. She says, Baba J, if John Pryor was a prosecutor, I bet money no. If the prosecutor's annoying, I will say the prosecutor's annoying, and I have. So, like, I am equal opportunity calling people douche nozzles. So we will see,
I can absolutely vouch for Jay, and I'm the same way. You know, if like,
right, yeah.
Like I got how people hated Shannon Smith. You know, like I got it. Like it wasn't lost on me why she would irritate the shit out of people. You know, but at the same time, I mean, I just respected the fact that she was, again, going alone like Pryor is. Like when I was reading from Lori Hellis, who's a defense attorney, who's boots on the ground, she's like I had only tried one case by myself. There was a 2-week trial and it's exhausting, but just because there's so much shit going on. So like, just from like the perspective of understanding how hard the job is and to do it alone, like I've kind of got that in the back of my mind always with Pryor kind of moving through this thing. But all right, sorry for the long diatribe, y'all.
That's all right. That's all right. We'll catch up. There'll be a
Right.
break.
Or you can just get a different phone and same thing. And you buy that at, I don't want to give anybody publicity, but large retail stores that sell a lot of groceries and other things, right?
Yes.
You know what we're talking
Yes.
about. Okay. So if you're having an affair with somebody and you don't want to get discovered that you're having this affair with another woman while you're still married, it wouldn't be illogical for you to buy a number of phones, and as the phones expire, you just buy another phone to sort of protect yourself from being discovered that you're having this affair. Would that be fair?
Correct. I mean, in this
Okay.
situation, he's not buying phones. It's changed. It's the same phone. The IMEI number stayed the same on all of them. So the device didn't change, but the phone number did. Yes.
Okay.
Same idea.
So that would be, it's possible that what he's trying to do is he's trying to cover up the fact that he doesn't want to be discovered by his wife that he's cheating on her, right?
Correct.
Okay. And Judge, if I can ask the court again the number for the summary of search activity with Lolly time with Lori Vallow, what that exhibit was again?
It's 184A.
If I have permission, Judge, may I have permission to publish?
You can publish that page, which is a printed copy of the PowerPoint presentation.
So again, we see the subject of Malachite and whoever is on Lolly time, whether it's Lori Vallow or whatever, is doing that, correct?
Correct.
Now, this is what is interesting to me on 7/21 of 2019. Okay?
Objection, Your Honor. Again, there's a narrative. I'd move to strike and counsel and ask that he ask a question.
Yeah,
I'll ask him.
it is sustained, and Mr. Pryor, please refrain from that. It's just
Okay.
questions.
All right. So 7/21 of 2019, and my notes seem to indicate that you said that was a short time after Lori Vallow and Alex Cox murdered Charles Vallow. Is that fair?
Yes, that would have been approximately 10 days after Charles's death.
Okay. And prior to Lori Vallow moving to Idaho, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, you know from the facts, and you familiarized yourself with the Charles Vallow case, right?
That's correct.
And you know from the facts that at the time Charles Vallow was murdered, Lori Vallow was there, wasn't she?
At approximately the same time. I don't know the exact timing. I know she left
Right.
at a certain point, but I don't know exactly the time frame. Yes.
Well, you know that after the murder, that Lori Vallow was interviewed in front of the house right after the murder.
That's correct. Yes.
You also know that she left a little bit of time because prior to the murder, Tylee Ryan was present, and so was J.J. Vallow.
He's really trying. Like, this hasn't been ruled a murder. She still has to be tried for that, but he wants you to think it's a murder because Alex Cox did it, right? I mean, that's why he's using that language. Shouldn't they object?
Well, we know that Alex Cox shot him dead. So the question
Right.
became,
We do know that.
you know, and obviously if Cox was alive, he would have been arguing that it was self-defense. Like that was always kind of what they were implying, that Charles was chasing him around with a bat, you know, and then Lori's going to whatever drive-through. Like they have the video of her with the kids in the car while, and like I think it was established. I can't remember 100%, so don't quote me on it. But I think it was like she went to the drive-through after,
Yeah,
like
after.
Alex
She went
shot
after.
Charles Vallow.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, look, we know he, like he 100% is trying to put all these murders on Alex.
Just interesting. I figured the state, like when they, like, I guess they want to make a big deal of it, but like, I don't know if it wasn't murder. Like we don't, I mean, well, I think it was a murder, but like there hasn't been a court case that has confirmed that. I mean, I guess maybe because they try him for it. I don't know. Just
What the
Well,
time
I mean, they
had
couldn't
around the
try. Like,
circumstances.
I know what you're saying. They can't. Like, obviously, they couldn't try Alex because he died. Which,
right.
you know, if you're asking me my gut on that, they somehow, like, I think that they killed Alex. Like they knew that he was obviously the wild card, that he was a loose end, and you know, I think that they were able that like that's that whole time when they sent him down to Mexico to get this shit, and you know, it's like they were nefarious, man. Like had they not been stopped, I don't know how long like the killing spree would have gone on. Like it would have been. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It really is.
Is relating to the murder of Charles Vallow, correct?
Correct.
So it seems then that at least Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow would have knowledge or at least information as it relates to the murder of Charles Vallow. Would that seem logical?
Yes, it would.
Okay. So if someone's looking and realizing that their children witnessed the murder of their father by their own brother, that's a motive for a number of things, right?
I suppose.
Okay. It's also a motive on 7/21 of 2019 to come up with a reason to get rid of a child if that child witnessed the murder of their stepfather, correct?
Wow.
Potentially.
Wow.
Okay, potentially?
I don't know if they saw that. I believe that Lori and the children left. I think if I understand right, there's a bit of discrepancy about if the kids were actually there
Right.
to witness the shooting, but I thought that they left prior to the actual shooting.
Well,
But they listened to there was an argument, yes.
And there's a discussion because part of the FBI and the officers down there interviewed witnesses who suggested both sides of that issue, correct?
Correct. I don't know if we know. I mean, Tylee obviously isn't here to ask, so we're not sure what exactly she saw at the time.
Yeah. So we don't know what JJ saw. We don't know what Tylee saw because the evidence goes both ways in terms of what exactly did they see in regards to the murder of Charles Vallow, right?
I believe Tylee was interviewed, and I don't recall what her interview
agree,
stated,
Ada.
Okay.
but I don't remember about JJ.
Okay. But you also know that one of Tylee's very close friends was interviewed and provided information about what Tylee said as well, right?
I don't remember that, but
Okay.
that makes sense, yes.
Yeah. So then that's why there's some discussion because we don't know exactly where Tylee was when Dallas Cox murdered Charles Vallow, right?
Correct.
Okay. So Lori Vallow, before she comes to Idaho on 7/21 of 2019, searches a life insurance policy for her children. Okay. Now there's no equal discussion I didn't see it and I went looked at the stuff. I didn't see anything where Chad Daybell talked about life insurance for the children. He didn't, did he?
No, sir.
And there's no email or search on let's kill 2 kids, right? By Chad Daybell?
No.
Okay. And would you agree with me that part of the rationale of bringing up Hiplos and James and Elena is because of the religious connotation, right?
Not necessarily the religious connotation. It just provides some context in other evidence because of the aliases, and it gets complicated with the names that they call each other.
Right.
So to see that they're being searched by these individuals and to provide context for later of
Okay.
where these names are coming from.
Okay. Now, so we have some references to religion. calling each other religious names. And you're aware that both of these folks have strong religious beliefs.
Yes, sir.
And you're aware Melanie Gibb has strong religious beliefs.
Yes, sir.
David Warwick has strong religious beliefs.
Yes, sir.
Zulema Pastenes, Alex's wife, strong religious beliefs.
Yes.
In fact, the circle of all these people, there's repeated references to religion, right?
Absolutely.
Strong references to religion.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess what I'm kind of wondering, is it a bigger motive to kill two kids by their mother and brother to cover up the murder of a fourth husband? Or is it because they killed the kids because Chad, Lori, Melanie Gibb, and David Warwick and Zulema Pastenes have strong religious beliefs? Which one is a greater motive to murder children?
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
Sustained.
Yeah. (9:30 of 2019). How to get the back seat out of a Jeep. And that's Lori Vallow, right?
Yes, sir.
There's nothing about Chad Daybell trying to figure out how to get the back seat out of a Jeep, right?
No, sir.
And I guess if a girlfriend asks you to help me get a tire because somebody wants to use the Jeep, that would explain why Chad was helping his girlfriend load and unload a tire, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Gilbert, Arizona News on the day that Brandon Boudreaux, and you've previously testified that Brandon Boudreaux, Chad Daybell is not criminally implicated in anything with Brandon Boudreaux, correct?
He's not being charged, correct, sir?
He's what?
He's not being charged.
Right,
in
not
Arizona,
being
correct,
charged,
yes.
not being pursued for anything for any reason. But
Objection, Your Honor. That misstates the testimony.
Sustained. And again, counsel, try to let the witness finish her response before you get into another question, please.
Your Honor, and I would move to strike counsel's last statement.
I'll strike that. I'll instruct the jurors not to consider that last statement.
okay, so your comment is Chad Daybell has not been charged. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Did you see a likewise Google search on Chad Daybell's Google account that talked about Gilbert, Arizona on that day?
Not that I recall.
Okay. And then you're aware that that on 10/22 of 2019, are you aware that Lori Vallow was in Hawaii by herself with a friend?
Yes.
And you were aware that her friend was Audrey?
Yes, Audrey and maybe Melanie Boudreaux. I know there was some shuffling there, but I don't remember the exact time frame. But
Right.
yes.
But they were, about 10/22 of 2019, Lori Vallow and a couple of friends went to Hawaii, and I believe they were in Kauai, I remember. Is that fair?
I don't remember what island, but yes, that sounds fair.
But the purpose of them being there was to start the process of getting a wedding dress for Audrey Boudreaux, right?
I do not know that. No, sir.
Okay. But the three of them were there, right?
Yes.
Okay. You just don't know why they were there and what they were doing there on that day, right?
Yeah, it seemed like kind of a spontaneous.
So if Audrey Boudreaux was looking for a wedding dress on 10/22 of 2009.
Your Honor, objection. Counsel's stating facts not in evidence.
Yeah, there's no Audrey Boudreaux, Mr. Pryor.
I'm sorry, Judge?
Audrey Boudreaux.
Baratori, Judge. I'm sorry. I said Boudreaux. It's Baratori. I got the name wrong. No. Is that the correct name?
Audrey Baratiero or
Baratiero.
Melanie Boudreaux. Yeah.
I got them backwards.
They both were in Hawaii, but yeah, I'm not sure which one you were.
With her.
Correct. I think some of them overlapped, but at different times. I don't know on 10/22 exactly off the top of my head now.
Right. And you don't know, and you don't have facts one way or the other as to whether or not on that particular day they were looking for wedding dresses, right?
I don't, other than that search, no.
Okay. Judge, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
All
right.
right.
Ms. Blake, redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor.
No, the defense lawyer.
Question. You were asked about.
Yeah, that's a cop on the scene. Sorry, I was just
We'll
talking
start
about
with the last question. You were asked about Audrey Baratario and searching for wedding dresses. Are you aware if Audrey's married?
At the time, I don't believe she was, no.
Anything in your investigation or records you reviewed that showed she was engaged?
I believe she'd mentioned, or I don't think she was actually married, no. I'm trying to remember now. I don't think she was.
it's not the question.
And you were asked about the attempted shooting of Brandon Boudreaux. And I think you indicated Chad has not been charged in that. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
And in relation to Charles Vallow, Chad has not been charged. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
Are you still part of any active investigation in those cases?
Am I on to testify in those cases?
Are you assisting in any further investigation, if there is any going on?
No,
And those are being handled by agencies in Arizona, is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
So all you can say right now is that Chad hasn't been charged.
Yeah, I haven't really followed that portion of it, no, other than what was included in this investigation, yes.
You were asked about those Ned Snyder searches. Are you aware through your investigation who designated Charles as Ned?
I guess Lori calls Charles Ned is the first time where you sort of hear that on the body cam footage. Charles is relaying that Lori refers to him as Ned. I don't know
the answer
where
she
that name
wanted.
comes from, no. I don't know if she brought it up or if Chad gave her that name. I don't know how that worked.
And the searches from Chad were being done around the same time Charles is reporting that Lori's calling him Ned Schneider.
It's around the same time, yes.
You were asked about the potential for someone else to use Chad's email to do some searches.
Potentially, yes.
Did you find any searches in related to that email, to Chad's email, regarding divorce or separation?
Not that I recall.
You were also asked about people changing phone numbers to hide an affair.
Yes.
Are there, in your experience, do people involved in criminal activity also switch phone numbers?
Yes.
And then there was some talk about Melanie. Actually, let me back up. There was some extensive discussion regarding the killing of Charles Vallow and where JJ and Kylie were. Do you know where they were at the time Charles was actually shot?
I don't believe they were there. I believe the report said that Lori took the children to, I think they went to Burger King or something. But I don't know if that was corroborated or not.
And we talked about the phone attribution earlier, and with one of Chad's numbers, you'd made reference to attributing that number to him in part because of a mortuary call. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And that call to the mortuary, do you recall what day that took place?
I believe it was July 11th, 2019,
And when was Charles killed?
the same day.
And do you know where the mortuary was located that he placed that call to?
In Arizona, but I don't remember which city.
And Charles was killed in Arizona?
That's correct.
Then you were asked quite a bit about Melanie Gibb and David Warwick. Their names came up at least. Is that fair?
Yes.
Did Melanie, through your investigation, did you determine whether, or was there anything to indicate Melanie Gibb or David Warwick profited from JJ's death?
Judge, objection goes beyond scope.
Overruled.
I did not learn of anything why they would benefit from JJ's death, no.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
All right. I don't believe that opened any doors for additional recross. Did you have anything, Mr. Pryor?
Judge, I would have a couple subjects, but if the court's determination is that there's nothing open for recross, I'll defer to the court's wisdom.
All right. That'll conclude then the testimony of this witness. Practical Agent Heidemann, you are done testifying. Is this witness going to be recalled, do you believe?
She is going to be recalled by the state. I'm not sure if she's being recalled by the defense.
Not by the defense, Judge.
Okay, since you are going to be recalled, I'll just remind you there is an exclusionary order in place. You're not permitted to discuss your testimony or review the testimony of other witnesses in the case in between now and the time that you're recalled. If you don't comply with that order, you may be prohibited from further testimony. So please comply with that.
Sure.
All right. You can go ahead and step down then, and I'll inquire of the state momentarily as to who they will be calling as their next witness.
Let's see
Duncan.
who it is, folks.
It's Duncan, a Chandler cop, Chandler, Arizona cop.
Way to spoil it, Bob. Way to spoil the suspense.
Sorry, Jay.
All right, who will the state call next?
And thank you, Your Honor. I'm just looking at the time. I think it's about 15 minutes to 10. The next witness, I believe, will be on the stand for quite some time. I'm not sure if the court would like to take a break now or how soon you wanted to take the mid-morning break.
My preference is to probably get started with this witness if they're a longer witness anyway, and then go for maybe another 30 minutes.
So trying to take a break at about 10:15.
I think so.
I will try to keep an eye on the clock for that. The next witness is Detective Duncan.
Okay.
Come on down.
Officer Orthorn.
So Duncan's one of the cops who was investigating Charles Vallow's murder.
Getting
All right, the court
all
will
the
note
cops
that
out of the way.
witness,
FBI
Detective
cops.
Duncan, has been placed under oath. I am going to inquire as to whether or not you have viewed any of these trial proceedings because it is being live streamed. Have you listened in on any of the testimony that's been provided in trial since the case started?
I have not.
All right, thank you for that affirmation. With that, Ms. Blake, you can go ahead and inquire on direct if you'd like.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you please spell your name for the record?
Good morning. My name is Nathan Duncan. It's Nathan. Last is Duncan, Duncan.
Where are you currently employed?
I'm currently employed with the Chandler Police Department in Chandler, Arizona.
What is your current title and/or position?
I'm currently assigned to the robbery homicide unit as a detective.
How long have you been with that unit?
Robbery homicide unit, I've been there for 10 years.
Have you held other positions within the Chandler Police Department?
I have. I was hired with Chandler Police Department in year 2000, June of 2000, went to the academy, graduated in September. After graduating from the academy, I was a patrol officer for roughly 3 years. And after that, I went to the property crimes unit as a detective for approximately 11 years.
Do you have any specialized training in order to be a law enforcement officer?
So our training, like I stated, in June of 2000, we attend the Arizona Law Enforcement Academy as a program. I believe it was 16 weeks. And then afterwards, we attend a field training program with our own department. After that, every year, for the last almost 24 years, we go through advanced officer training, and we also do additional training in our specific area of expertise, if you would.
And were you working with the Chandler Police Department on July 11th of 2019?
I was.
Do you recall if you were on shift?
I was, yes.
And do you recall responding out to a report of a shooting?
Yes.
Do you recall where that was?
Report of the shooting on July 11, 2019 happened at about 8:36 a.m. at the address of 5531 South Four Peaks Place in Chandler.
And you said the call came in about 8:36 a.m.?
Correct.
Were you one of the first responding law enforcement?
I was not.
Do you recall approximately when you responded out?
I would have arrived probably 20, 30 minutes after that original call.
When a call comes in of a shooting, who goes out first? Is it a patrol officer, a detective? Can you talk a little bit about that process?
So the immediate response to a call for service, in this case a 911 call, a patrol officer will respond, or multiple patrol officers will respond for that call of service. They will get there, triage the situation, assist in any way they can, and then determine what they have. If additional resources are needed or investigative resources are needed from detectives, then detectives will be called in.
And in this case, did you learn who made that 911 call?
I did.
And who was that?
Alex Cox.
Did you learn what was reported?
Yes, Alex had contacted 911 and reported that he had shot his brother-in-law, Charles Vallow, in self-defense.
Prior to that, had you ever heard the name Charles Vallow?
I had not.
Had you ever heard the name Alex Cox?
I had not.
When you arrived on scene, were you given specific assignments?
Yes, in homicide investigations, we were given assignments. The case agent in this case was Detective Nathan Moffat, and he will assign tasks, if you would. In this particular case, I was assigned, along with Detective Coons, to document the crime scene.
And I think you've said, and that's common in a homicide investigation.
Yes, there are many multiple parts that go into a homicide investigation: interviews, scene processing. So we have a team of 6 at our particular unit, so we will divide up tasks.
At some point, did your role within the investigation change?
It did.
And can you talk a little bit about that?
So with the promotion of Detective Moffat in June of 2020, I was assigned to be the case agent in the death of Charles Vallow in June of 2020. However, I had done work prior to this date on this case.
And backing up to that July 11th, you're one of the scene detectives.
Yes.
Can you walk us through what you observed when you got there?
So as our job as a scene detective, we are there to document the scene, and we are assisted by crime scene technicians in this effort. So our first move that we'll make is we'll have the patrol officers who are present, who can provide some of the information to us as to what took place, give us a briefing. From that point, one of our crime scene technicians will enter and take overall photographs. And during this time, we will make observations of our own. The crime scene in this case was very simple relative to other crime scenes. The residence on Four Peaks Place, single-family residence. You enter the residence through a front door on the west of the residence. As you enter, you come into a small foyer, and then it opens up into a large living room. This one was unique, in which there was a wood plank floor. There was no furniture in this living room. There was mirrors along the north side, an open window along the east side, mirrors on the wall on the south side, and mirrors on the wall on the west side. So as indicated, it was very sparse. There was no furniture at all. Inside, when making my observations, I noticed the body of a Caucasian male, later identified to be Charles Vallow, laying on the west side of this room. North of where he was laying, there was an aluminum baseball bat. And then a little bit north of this was a baseball cap that we had found out was worn by Charles earlier. To the west of Charles' body, there were 2 .45 caliber casings that were recovered. Also noted during this time was a bullet strike and a lodged bullet, or what we refer to as a projectile, that had lodged into the baseboard along the east side of that particular room.
And as you walk in, that's your initial scene observation?
Yes.
As part of the scene detective, or just as part of the investigation, did you make observations regarding the body of Charles Vallow?
I did.
And I guess to back up a little bit, are you aware as to Charles' condition when first responding officers arrived?
When first responding officers arrived, he was pronounced dead by the Chandler Fire Department.
So upon your arrival, he'd already been pronounced dead?
That is correct.
Do you know if prior to your arrival there were any life-saving measures taken?
There were reports in that Alex Cox had done CPR, and there was also indications, evidence left behind that the fire department had placed EKG or AED pads on Charles to determine whether life-saving efforts were needed.
And you said it was reported that Alex had done CPR. Did you observe any signs that would support CPR having been performed?
So in looking at Charles' body and the position that it was found, his head was to the north and his feet were to the south and his arms were to his side. I did see one wound consistent with a bullet wound in the front lower left quadrant of his torso. And that's the only wound that I noticed at the time. His shirt was cut open. He had a black t-shirt on. It was cut open by fire department. And as indicated, AED pads and EKG leads were put on for medical intervention. I did notice a lot of blood that was present on the floor or surrounding his body. Did not notice a lot of blood, which in my opinion, having given CPR and having been shot multiple times, I believe there should have been more blood.
And in relation to the CPR, had it been performed, you would have expected to see more blood?
I would have expected that, yes.
So based on your experience, you didn't see signs of CPR having been performed?
Correct.
And additional observations of Charles' body, were you able to see how many wounds he had initially?
So as indicated initially, it was just the one that I noticed with the front of his body, the lower left quadrant of his torso.
And at some point, did you notice any additional injuries to Charles' body?
I did.
And can you tell us what those were?
So in this case, in all homicide or death investigation cases, when the medical examiner is coming out to assist in these cases, the body is considered evidence, and we do not touch the body until the medical examiner arrives. They have jurisdiction over the body. So my initial observations were that one wound consistent with a bullet wound to the front lower left quadrant. After the medical examiner arrives, they take their own series of photographs, and we provide them with information that we know at the time. At that point, the medical examiner will then begin to examine or manipulate the body as they choose. During this time, the AED pad that was placed in the center of Charles's chest was removed, and an additional wound consistent with a bullet wound was noticed in the center of his chest. Additionally, when Charles's body was rolled, there were 2 additional wounds on his back consistent with bullet holes.
And when you talk about the 2 injuries to the front and the 2 to the back, did they appear to be, one being an entry wound, one being an exit wound, did they appear to be linked?
We try not to make that determination at the time. A lot of that goes in as far as entry exits. And we also do the totality of the circumstances. In this case, Alex had mentioned that he had shot twice. So we would assume that they would be entrance wounds and exit wounds.
And so you talked about, Alex said he'd shot Charles twice, correct?
Correct.
Are you aware of what else Alex had claimed in relation to the shooting?
As indicated, he claimed that he had shot him in self-defense. He had indicated that he had the baseball bat, and Charles had struck Alex in the back of the head with the baseball bat and refused to drop the bat, and that's when he shot him.
And based on your observations, were you able to form any opinion in your training and experience as to where where Charles would have been in relation to the shooting?
Yes. So Alex had informed us that he was standing in the southwest corner of this particular living room, as described, and he was facing in a northeast direction, and he and Charles were face to face with each other. He indicated that he shot him twice standing up, and he shot him twice in the chest from a standing position.
And are you aware if you talked about the medical examiner's office showing up to take Charles' body?
Yes.
Do you know if an autopsy was ultimately conducted?
It was.
And are you aware if there was any determination made as to whether or not Charles would have been standing when both shots were fired?
So the 2 wounds, according to the medical examiner, the wound described in the center of the chest was front to back, exited his back, and it was slightly at a downward angle. The second wound that I'd mentioned, the lower left quadrant, that bullet traveled upward at a very steep angle, exiting the back of Charles's shoulder. When examining and observing the original scene, we had brought Alex back to do what's called a walkthrough, to have him explain exactly where he was when all this took place. He indicated, like I stated, that he was standing and fired 2 shots standing, and while Charles was in front of him. Prior to Alex coming, we made the decision to cleaning up the blood that was left. And when we did clean up that blood, noticed an indention in the plate wood flooring that was near Charles's left shoulder, and that would be consistent with the exit wound on that back left. Also near Charles's left shoulder was a bullet or a projectile that was present when first responders arrived. So based on the autopsy reports and the scene evidence, the first shot fired on Charles would have been the center of his chest, exiting the back and then lodging in the baseboard. The second shot fired at Charles would have been while he was laying down on the ground.
And you talked about this room either not having furniture, being very sparsely furnished. Based on your investigation, were you able to determine whether or not a struggle had occurred?
Obviously, one thing we look at, we're trying to determine and prove or disprove the self-defense claim. And with the room being sparsely furnished, we were unable to see if anything was knocked over, broken, anything like that. Charles did have some wounds or some abrasions to his knees. He was wearing shorts at the time. So he had some abrasions to his knees and also some scrapes on his hands or arms, some minor scrapes there. So those two things would indicate that a struggle took place, but other than that, there was nothing that would indicate that.
And you talked about, we've talked a little bit about the blood in relation to at least the CPR. Was there any additional blood located in the residence?
There was.
And can you talk a little bit about that?
So Alex had indicated that he had washed his hands in the sink at the residence. The only other location that blood was present, besides underneath Charles's body, was on the faucet in the kitchen sink.
And was this, based on the report of the shooting, was this investigated as a homicide?
Yes, it was.
And we talked a little bit about, you ended up taking over the case or being assigned the case agent or the lead on this in June of 2020.
Correct.
You initially responded out on this July 11th date of 2019. Did you continue to work on the case after July 11th, 2019?
Unfortunately, right after this homicide, I had another homicide, so I did not work on it for a period of time. I then picked up this case and assisted Detective Moffat roughly January of 2020 with looking at phone extractions and iCloud information.
And when you picked up again in January, you talked about you started looking at phone extractions.
Correct.
As part of that, did you end up seeking some search warrants?
I did.
And was one of the devices that you reviewed the content of Charles Vallow's phone?
Yes, it was.
And do you recall how you came to be in possession of Charles Vallow's phone?
Yes. Through our investigation, we had determined that Charles's phone was pretty much the catalyst of an argument that occurred between Lori and Charles on this day. After the shooting, or shortly after the shooting, Lori had left the house, taking Charles's phone with her. She would later return that phone to detectives, and that phone was now in our possession, and an extraction was done on that actual device.
And did you in fact review the extraction?
I did.
And in reviewing the extraction, was there a significant amount of information contained on that device?
Yes, there is.
And as you went through it, did you look at things that seemed to have significance to you in relation to the investigation?
Yes.
And in preparation of your testimony today, did you prepare an exhibit related to that content?
I did.
Do you believe that it would aid in your testimony today?
Absolutely.
Do you believe it would aid the jurors in understanding the evidence and information?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask that the witness be shown what's been marked as State's Exhibit 49. I do have a copy for counsel and a courtesy copy for the court as well. Again, as with some of the last exhibits from the state, these are printouts of a PowerPoint. The PowerPoint itself is on a jump drive. I'll be one exhibit. Or
And is it your position I get one of these?
yes, there would be a copy for you.
Thank you. Thank you, officer.
Okay.
By the way, folks, if you're coming in late, Bob is also streaming this on his Instagram, folks. So if you're on Instagram, Defense Diaries, make sure to sub, and you can watch it there too if you want.
And it looks horrible.
Here to be an accurate
Does? Oh,
depiction of
bad.
the PowerPoint
Yeah,
that you
because they
prepared.
can only
They
do
do.
vertical on Insta, so
Oh.
it's like you can't see us. You can only see two of the screen. I'm thinking about killing it because it's like
Disregard.
it's
Disregard.
half. Yeah, forget it. It's like Insta is not good because it's like it would only work if they only had one screen. I think for a quad screens, it's kind of a tiny nightmare over there.
All right, don't go to Insta. I lied. But watch us on YouTube
Go
and
to our Twitters.
and
Yeah.
Twitter. Yeah.
And again, they are taken from an extraction from Charles Vallow's cell phone. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Did that include looking at an iCloud account?
It does include an iCloud account. Yes.
And does it include messages or other content from that phone as well?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I would move for the admission of State's Exhibit 49.
No objection, Judge.
All right, Exhibit 49 will be admitted, and again, this will be actually the PowerPoint on a digital format, and the court has reviewed a printed copy of that. Ms. Blake, with that being introduced, if you'd like, I think this would be a good time to stop for the morning recess before we start with the publishing of this, if that's where you're headed.
That is where I'm headed next, Your Honor.
Okay, let's go ahead and take our mid-morning recess then, 30-minute recess, and we will be back on the record after that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All rise, please.
All right, folks. So it won't be a 30-minute break for you since we were a little behind. It might be like a 10-minute break. But Bob, you said you had some news from Lori in the courtroom.
Yeah. So Jay and I were talking yesterday about this motion that's been filed that's going to be heard, I think, on the 18th. And so Lori, and it's under seal, meaning that the public nor the press can be in there. And she had asked me not to, she gave me a rather long update and she asked me not to read it verbatim, but it sounds like the gist of it, Jay, is that the show cause that was filed last week is requesting an evidentiary hearing. And it sounds like the bottom line is this, is that Rexburg, Idaho, is a very small town. That 96% of the members of that town are also members of the LDS church, which includes the judge, all the attorneys except for John Pryor. They're all members of the LDS. Rob Wood, the prosecutor, is a member of the LDS. And Alice and I had brought this up earlier in Lori Vallow's trial because we thought it was interesting in terms of, when you've got more traditional Latter-day Saint church members who are actively like involved with the trial, especially a judge who's hearing people that have bastardized their religion that they take very seriously. Does that create a potential issue of bias or conflict? And I mean, you can't dismiss it offhand because I mean, people take their religion very seriously. And, when they're sitting there hearing about all this crap that Lori and Chad were doing, where they're using a lot of the tenets from that religion, but they're changing it in many different ways, in ways that they were, could be concerned that it reflects poorly on their religion, so it's like, it's an interesting concept. So basically, it sounds like there was a Facebook page, okay, or a Facebook group that was it was a county employee Facebook group that included the magistrate, another judge, Rob Wood, the prosecutor, Judge Boyce was in there, and Wood supposedly was commenting on evidence in the group along with several other law enforcement officers. So there's no way to know if he saw them. So it sounds like they're going to be delving into it sounds like they filed motions to have the prosecution disqualified based on this. The judge sealed all the documents, and the judge has only been upgraded from magistrate to district court in October 2019. So, and then they obviously had to shut everything down for COVID. He apparently didn't use the proper procedure to seal the documents. And so, like, I'm not going to get into like Lori, like Lori's boots on the ground, and she's an attorney, so she knows her shit. So when they weren't properly sealed, she may or may not have gotten to see documents that should have been sealed, but weren't sealed. So she didn't violate any kind of rules or anything like that. So she says it's going to get juicy. She says it's like kind of a big deal, like, and it's going to this whole thing where, they're going to be trying to argue conflict. They're going to be trying to argue bias. And so this other attorney that I was talking about yesterday, that sounds like he may be the one coming in to argue it as opposed to Pryor, but it could be Pryor, but that would make sense to me because Pryor doesn't need to be concerning himself with that, which is collateral, but relevant, obviously, potentially, where he's trying to deal with this trial. And, but clearly there's an interest there from the defense side of it if they can show that there's potential for, bias with respect to the prosecuting office and the lead prosecutor in the case. So it'll be interesting. So that, she said that I think the hearing on the weird motion to intervene is still set for Thursday. So she doesn't really know that's that other lawyer. So she doesn't seem to kind of quite know what that thing's about. And then she said there's another hearing scheduled without the jury tomorrow. She said, stay tuned. So it sounds sticky. It sounds like there's a lot of other stuff going on behind the scenes. And, you get that in small communities. It's like I was telling you, this kind of the thing that I found so fascinating about Lori's trial was this kind of like merging of, people's First Amendment right to practice whatever religion they choose, constitutional issues, criminal law, people's beliefs, their faith, like everything being kind of like mashed together in one trial. And you're seeing it like with this kind of stuff, it's like, because Utah, whether, I don't know if you're familiar with it. I mean, like almost everyone that lives in Utah is of some type of Mormon faith, whether it's Latter-day Saints. It's a very, very religious community and state, like overall. And then when she's talking about in Rexburg, Rexburg, Idaho, where it's 96% of the people that live in that town are LDS. That's a lot, dude. That's like, so it's like and it always goes back to, can Daybell get a fair trial? It's one of those things where, so they're going to dig into it. I don't think we're going to be privy to it. I anticipate that probably we might not have a live stream if the court's going to be silent as to the rest of us, because I don't think it's going to be a public hearing at all. So that's the update from Lori.
Second Hook had a question. Are Shannon and Allie still doing the summaries? They are, but that could be when we start covering Karen Reed, which right now is in jury selection. I'm looking at the last update from the journalist who's in there. The judge just met with some jurors in chambers, not all, unknown why, perhaps to discuss hardships. Now she's in court, meeting with each juror to discuss whether they should determine Karen Reed's fate. So yeah, guys, we're keeping an eye on Karen Reed. It could take to the end of the week, potentially till next week, to pick a jury. But once that goes live, me and Bob will cover that, and that's then when Shannon and Allie will come in at night and give you the updates of the important stuff that has been going on.
Yeah, and Mandy gave us an update, Jay. The judge has made a ruling on the third-party culprit defense. She has decided to allow it, which is great for us. It's got to be developed through their own witnesses and through cross-examination. She, however, is not allowing them to bring it up in opening remarks. So during their opening statements, they're not going to be able to do it. The judge in Garcia, with respect to our Saudi defense, didn't allow us to do it either. And I think it's a proper ruling until you can kind of flesh it out to the point where the judge feels comfortable that it's got legs. I think that it's the safe bet to not allow for the defense to bring it up kind of without it being proved up otherwise in opening. So I've got no problem with that ruling. I think it's the proper ruling. So that's going down. And also I just posted the defenses for all of those of you who plan on hanging with Jay and I while we're streaming that trial. I just posted the defense's witness list, which has an awful lot of Alberts on it, a lot of cops and a lot of Alberts. This is going to be, I cannot state enough how contentious this is going to be. This is going to be, and both of these defense lawyers are really good defense attorneys. Alan Jackson, who's a guy that is a California lawyer who, I don't know if you guys know who Joshua Ritter is. He does True Crime Daily or True Crime Watch, one of the two, I forget, but he'll have me on with him. And he just let me know that he was worked with Alan Jackson for 6 years. So I told him I want to special guest him. We'll have him on during the trial. Sonny has been reaching out. So we're going to have a bunch of special guests on that we think will add a lot of great content and perspective. Like we're going to knock this thing out of the park. It's going to be a great trial. I'm super excited about it. And Jay and I will, of course, do what we do, which is give you all the love and give you all the knowledge. And we love to interact with you guys, as you know. So,
right.
And we love that you're here.
And we're going to do it in a place where you can feel like you don't, I'm just going to put the court is coming back. So but before I go there, I just want to say, we're going to do it in a place. We're pretty proud of our mods. I mean, we're always proud of our mods. They're fucking awesome. But our community, because our community knows, there's going to be a lot of different opinions on this trial. We know that going into this, but we're not going to allow people to bully people. We're not going to allow people to be trolls. Our mods are awesome, and they will throw that shit out. So if you're just looking for a place, and again, me and Bob haven't really made we're taking this evidence as it comes in. I know there's going to be a lot of other people covering it, and they may have, you know, opinions on it. We're going to see the evidence, how it comes in. We'd love to have you join us. Tell your friends to join us if that's a place that they would like, you know, like to see the trial. So
yeah, we're going to
wanted to
truly be an unbiased safe haven, you know, where it doesn't matter what side you're on coming in, you know, as long as you're civil and, you know, like that makes for a great chat. There's nothing better than rigorous civil debate in a chat where everybody's just being cool, everybody's being intellectual, everybody's being kind to everyone else, and we can have great debates. You know, it's like it makes for such a great way to watch a trial, you know, because echo chambers aren't fun. And frankly, we're all going to be watching this thing in real time. No one on either side should have reached any kind of final decision anyway. Those people that are
Right.
doing that are just wrong. I'm sorry.
Right.
You can't know whether or not a person's guilty of something until we have the evidence vetted and presented at trial. It's the only way that you can come to any conclusion. Yeah, we can have feelings about it. Yeah, you know, like I think that the Saudi thing might have legs. However, I also realize it could all be a bunch of like total bullshit. Like it's got to get put in front of you know, it's got to come from a witness and get vetted on cross-examination. You know, I mean, like that's the beauty of trial. So yeah, it's going to be,
Right.
we think it's going to be the best place to watch. I feel pretty confident in that. And like I said, we'll give you all a safe place to hang, no matter which way you're thinking on this thing. And we'll have some great special guests too during the ride, because it looks like it could be a hell of a long ride there, J-Bo.
Yeah, see, the judge said 6 to 8 weeks, and to your point, Bob, with the you know, a lot of people have made their decision. That's right, you know, and that's okay. We're but like to your point with the witnesses, none of them until this trial have heard these witnesses that they're making decisions on speak and like we can see, like this case could be so huge about the people in the house, the people, their credibility and their stories are going to mean everything. So, you know, that's like why we're keeping an open mind. And then, you know, once we start seeing this stuff, then we're going to start forming opinions. But until you see them speak, hear them speak, like it's like, and see
It's
the evidence
everything.
presented. It's yeah.
How fun is that
So-
going to be? Like after, like we see like the Alberts on the stand where we're like, oh man, I thought he was full of shit, or no, I thought he was like, oh, they got it. You know, I mean, that's what's like, this is like, to me, it's one of those rare kind of like true whodunit cases where we've got two separate theories where it's not just like, oh, my guy didn't do it. I can't really tell you who might have done it, but you know, trust me, my guy didn't do it. This isn't that. It's like we've got the state with their theory as to what happened to John O'Keefe. And remember, it's always about justice for John O'Keefe. He's the officer who lost his life. But then you've got the defense with their theory of what happened in that house. And it's not, in my estimation, complete and total pie in the sky. It's got legs. We're going to hear circumstantial evidence that comes out that's pretty compelling. Now, whether or not it's going to survive being vetted at trial, that's why we have the trial. It's going to be a great, great trial. I'm so looking forward to it. And it's going to be great because it's going to just finally silence the toxicity in that community. I mean, people will still be going out, like, you know, going at it. Luckily, Jay and I will be in our cocoon of happiness and trial watching. Like, you know, like all the hate will be bouncing off, and those people out there will just be in the toxic sludge, and we'll all be snugly in here just enjoying the trial and doing what we do. So yeah, make sure you're hanging with us for that one.
And by the way, just to add just one thing I was thinking about when you're describing this, we're gonna have witnesses from Boston, which is by the way is gonna be a whole another like little flavor to the trial. Like we've talked about this. Like we had a case in Connecticut, we've had like Northeast, but like we're gonna have a bunch of Boston, some accents. It's gonna be interesting,
Great.
folks. So
It's gonna be so good.
It really is.
Yeah.
But here we go. We are back live.
Let's roll.
From Boston. I think of that commercial. From Boston. Sam Adams commercial.
Boston.
It'll be sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts. Maybe they could sponsor us.
Yeah. Hey, let's go to the
Sam
Dunkin'.
Adams.
Let's go get some coffee. Let's go drink some coffee at the bar and then get in the
Jury is
car
present
and
and accounted
drive.
for.
All right, thank you. Please be seated.
Is the jury back in?
Yeah, they just set him down. Why, you want
Lock
to
the
pause it?
All right, we are back on the record now on KCR 22-211623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. Just concluded our mid-morning recess. And just before that, Ms. Blake, Exhibit 49 had been admitted. Detective Duncan is still on the stand under oath, and if you'd like to continue your direct, you may do that.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state would ask to publish State's Exhibit 49.
All right, you are allowed to do that.
And Detective Duncan, we've already talked about, but just to remind the jurors, the information contained in this PowerPoint was from Charles Vallow's phone. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And on this slide, can you please read this into the record?
Yes, I can. Hello, Chad. I hope you are doing well. This is Charles Vallow from Arizona. We really enjoyed having you stay with us back in November when you came to the Preparing a People conference. I appreciated you taking the time to talk to me about the book I've been working on. Well, more than 6 months later, I still haven't made much progress on it, but I feel an urgency to get it done. As the managing partner of Right Planning Group, I'm going to have the opportunity to speak at various conventions beginning in the fall. But everyone says I need to have a book available that summarized my life and shares the principles I follow. So I will cut to the chase. I'm willing to pay you well to help me get this book into shape as my ghostwriter. I really liked your autobiography and the tone you took in sharing experiences without preaching. Is there any way you could come here for a couple of days and help me get the book underway? I feel talking in person would be much more valuable than a phone call or video chat, mainly because I would like you to read through some of my journals and explain to me how the publishing industry works. It would help me know whether I truly have a book in me and whether you want to team up on it. I played minor league baseball and have plenty of stories that my audience could relate to, along with the knowledge I've gained running my own company. So I do feel the book would contain valuable information even beyond the convention circuit. I'm out of town until Sunday, but I would gladly fly you down here next week before the holiday and cover your expenses. You could stay in our guest room like before, or in a hotel if you prefer. I hate to take you away from your family, but I know this book is vital to my speaking success. I understand if you don't want to take part in the project, but I would definitely make it worth your time. With admiration, Charles.
And through your investigation, what did you learn in relation to this email or this message, if anything?
So this particular message was a document that, in looking at Charles' additional phone records, he had indicated to Lori, as well as to Lori's brother, Adam Cox, that he had found this on Lori's computer. This would have been the first letter to which he mentioned Chad or suspected Lori of having an affair with Chad.
And at some point, were you able to learn if this particular email was associated with a specific email address?
It was not.
And did you learn whether or not this was actually written by Charles?
All indications in Charles's phone and content that when he's sending this to Adam and to Lori is this was fictitious and this was not created by him.
And just to back up a little bit, as you're going through these extractions, were you aware of any other ongoing investigations that were related
to what you were looking into?
Yes, in January of 2020, when going through these extractions, I was aware of multiple investigations. I was aware of the disappearance of JJ and Tylee. I was also aware of the attempted or the shooting on Tammy Daybell, as well as Tammy Daybell's death. In addition to that, there is another case in Gilbert, Arizona, with the attempted shooting at Brandon Boudreaux.
And as you were looking through this phone extraction as well as others, were you also paying attention or looking for anything in relation to those other investigations that you thought could be helpful?
Yes, while going through these records, this particular record and subsequent records, I was mainly focusing on the Charles Vallow investigation, but anything that I saw that could have been pertinent to the locating JJ and Tylee and the other investigations, I would pass that along to other investigators in Idaho.
And as we talk through this, just to make clear to the jury, do you know how many, did Lori have a brother named Adam Cox?
Yes, she did.
Did he also have a brother named Alex Cox, or did she also have a brother named Alex Cox?
Yes, she did.
Was Adam Cox at any point a suspect in relation to this investigation?
He was not.
Was he someone that you learned had communications with Charles?
Yes.
Was Alex Cox a suspect?
Yes, he was.
Thank you. And if we look at the next slide, can you read these messages into the record?
Yeah, so these are messages that were found on Charles Vallow's phone extractions. The first message is from Charles to Lori, dated June 29, 2019 at 5:51 a.m. Is he with whom you're having an affair? He did not stay with us in Arizona in November. Who are you lying to now? Trying to destroy another family? You're evil. Period. I may take JJ back to Houston unless you have a great explanation for all of this. I will not let him be a party to your apostasy. The next message from Charles to Lori, June 29, 2019 at 6:04 a.m. Just so you know, I have Tammy, Chad's wife, email address. I will send a copy of my email you sent to KK Walker. Tammy will know what you're up to. You better explain. Charles then writes, June 29, 2019 at 6:10 a.m. I now have Tammy Daybell's cell number. I'll text her a copy of the letter and an explanation of what you're up to. You have till noon your time to explain, or I'm sending via text and email to her. And finally, Charles to Lori on June 29th at 6:55 a.m. I'm sure you're up by now. You have until 10 a.m. your time to respond, or I send the emails and texts to Tammy.
And at the time these emails are being exchanged, Charles is still alive, obviously,
Yes, he is.
and Tammy Daybell is still alive.
Yes,
And you had recovered that previous email that we talked about.
correct.
And that email appears to have been written by someone holding themselves out to be Charles to Chad Daybell.
Correct.
Through your investigation, did you learn whether or not Charles actually made contact or attempted to make contact with Tammy?
I did, yes.
And what did you learn in relation to that?
So again, looking at Charles' phone, there is indication that Charles had addressed emails to Tammy Daybell and sent those emails to her.
Do you know, or did you learn whether or not Tammy ever looked at those or received them?
No indication that she looked at them or received them.
And looking to the next slide.
Once again, Charles to Lori, June 29th, 12:23 p.m. Just so you know, and Chad know, I am going to talk to Tammy in person if I have to. I've already emailed and texted her, your game is up. Charles sends another message to Lori the same day at 5:04 p.m. Please stop spending money on the credit cards. I appreciate it.
And this is a continuation, it appears, from the conversation we were just looking at in the previous slide.
Yes, it is.
And we talked about any indication that Charles did in fact email Tammy. Did you uncover anything in your investigation regarding whether or not he ever attempted to visit her in person?
I did not.
And so we don't know, no evidence that he did.
Correct.
And looking at this date of June 29th, this is just a few weeks before Charles is shot and killed. Is that correct?
Correct.
And turning to the next slide, when we talk about the email, is this the one you were referencing?
Yes, it is.
And could you read this into the record?
So the first email from Charles Vallow to Tammy Daybell, and it was sent to tdaybell@sugarsalem.com on June 29th, 2019 at 9:06 is the stamp that was on the email. Tammy, my name is Charles Vallow. I have some vital and disturbing information regarding your husband and my wife, Lori. This is your work email, so I'll wait to send you the evidence that is very disturbing. You may call or email me from the address where you can receive the information. I apologize to be the one sending this, but something has to be done. I feel it's best if I shed some light on this issue. Regards, Charles Vallow, 714-853-5005.
And it looks like there's another one, or this may be the subject line. Could you read that next one?
Correct. The email from Charles to Tammy Daybell, coming from Charles Wright Planning Group email to another email for Tammy is tammy.daybell@gmail.com, June 30th. So the following day, 2019 at 10:16 a.m. The subject line on this email was your husband and my wife, and then the body are having an affair. Her name is Lori Vallow. I've got definite proof or definitive proof. If you care to see it, contact me and I'll share it with you. It's devastating, I know, but the truth needs to be shown. Charles Vallow.
And again, to be clear, through your investigation, you were never able to determine, or you did not learn whether or not Tammy actually saw these emails.
Correct.
And then can you talk about what we're seeing on this slide here?
This is another email from Charles Vallow, a Gmail account to chad.daybell@gmail.com, sent 6/29/2019 at 9:32 a.m. The email reads, Chad, I'm Lori's husband, but I gathered you already knew this. She sent an email yesterday, supposedly written by me, to KK Walker, inviting you to Arizona next week and to ghostwrite a book I'm supposedly working on. It's preposterous. I happened to run across it as she left her computer at our Houston home. I am not paying anybody for anything, and I am not writing a book. Either you or Lori need to tell me what's going on, or this will be exposed for all to see. Regards, Charles Vallow, 714-853-5005. And does your wife know you have several of Lori's dance videos? Explain how that is in any way appropriate. She sent them to you at your request in January, Charles.
And relating back to that first email, when we talk about the belief it wasn't drafted by Charles, did this play into why you believed that it was not drafted by him?
Yes, it did.
Is there anything else about this that drew your attention?
So this, obviously, Charles mentions a KK Walker, an email sent to KK Walker. So through this information, we were able to locate the KK Walker account of KK Walker 75 at yahoo.com.
And ultimately, were you able to link that KK Walker email to any particular person?
Yes.
And who was that?
Lori Vallow.
And if we look at this next slide, if you can tell us a little bit about what we're seeing and read that.
So also again on the actual Charles Vallow's device and the extraction from that device is a message from Charles to Lori on June 30th, 2019 at 8:42. Lori, I know you don't care much. I know you don't much care how I feel, but just imagine this. How could my actions or breaking your heart result in what you've done? You accuse me of infidelity, but it's you who have been having an affair. It just keeps killing me. Maybe that's your goal. How can you live with yourself destroying our life, Mel and Brandon's, probably Mel and Brendan too. Now add Chad Daybell family, and you've got a home run. The fact that you continue to go to the temple after all you've done shocks even me. There really is something wrong with you. I really don't want to do what I have to do, but you have to be exposed for what you really are. You won't even deny it or talk to me as to your reasons. That's what's amazing to me. You could allay some of what's about to happen, but I don't think you will. Lying has become second nature to you. You have been impressive in blaming me for all that's happened. You have destroyed me. I've never been lower in my life. It's you that has done it. Please tell me why, please. I will slow or minimize what's about to happen. It's you who has caused it. We have a son to raise, but that's all we have in common. I will work with you in his best interest and will be there Monday evening. You owe me an apology for all the false accusations you've made. You know I've been entirely faithful to you since the first day we met. I deserve an apology from you. Please respect that much.
So this message is sent around the same time the messages are being sent to Chad confronting him about the affair, correct?
Correct.
And this is also sent around the same time Charles reaches out to Tammy.
Correct.
Through your investigation, did you learn whether or not there were any divorce proceedings that had been going on between Charles and Lori?
I was not aware of any.
Do you know through your investigation, did you learn if at times they had separated?
There was indication that they were separating, living in different locations, yes.
And on this next slide, can you talk a little bit about what we're seeing here and then read these into the record?
Yes, once again, additional messages found on Charles Vallow's device. Charles to Lori, July 1st, 2019, 10:31. I'm going to Idaho first to meet with Tammy Daybell. Lori to Charles, July 1st, 2019, 10:32 a.m. She won't see you. She is my friend. She won't listen to you. Go ahead. You're ridiculous. Are you coming to JJ for the 4th or not? Charles to Lori, July 1st, 2019 at 10:37 a.m. Then you tell me why you used my name and a fictitious email to send a BS email about a book I am having him ghostwrite for me. It's fraud and a lie. There's no other reason for it other than to get him to Arizona or AZ, get him in AZ and have an excuse for his wife. Charles to Lori, July 1st, 2019, 10:38 a.m.
Chuck was
You
all
did
over
this.
that shit.
I had nothing to do with it, and you know it. Also, he did not stay with us in November. I will find out.
This shit was so heartbreaking.
Did you
Pause it for 1
learn
sec,
what
Chuck.
that reference of he did not?
So, Jay, do you know anything about the Charles Vallow thing?
Which part?
Like have you seen any of the details? Like, have you seen when the body worn cam when
Oh yeah,
Charles
we
Vallow,
we were preparing. So heartbreaking. He's trying to explain to these people, but how can you explain that? Like they can't understand what he's trying to say.
like people, like the depth of it's like he was being gaslit. Like the term gaslit was actually invented from what was happening from him, to him by like it was insane, man. But so I just want to answer one question real quickly because it would have been easier to just answer it. And it was Julie Gooley had asked Bob, why don't the witnesses review the dates? So when they testify, they have to have everything down pat. They do. The one thing that witnesses cannot do is get up on the stand with kind of a cheat sheet. This these events took place a long time ago. There's a million dates running through your head. I think that people try to do the best that they can, and that's why you'll get, situations where if a witness can't remember a date and it's on direct and you have the state, or if it's a defense witness and you're trying to kind of like give them hints, you can't really do it because you're leading. So like typically witnesses do the best they can, especially cops, they'll always try to review the reports, but we're dealing with the human mind and we're dealing with the pressure of testifying. So like, you're always going to see people misremember dates. You see Pryor, who clearly knows the case forward and backward, screwing up names. It happens. We're all human. So as much as we'd like to have everybody kind of nail everything, you're always going to see, kind of mess ups with dates and names and things of that nature. So, and the biggest takeaways, you just can't have like a cheat sheet up there. Like the cops can't have their reports up there, or at least they're not supposed to. And, witnesses can't have, and what you can do as an attorney is you can say, okay, well, has your memory been exhausted? And they could say, yeah. And I could say, okay, well, would seeing X, Y, and Z help refresh your recollection? They could say, yeah. And I could bring it up to them. They can review it. And then I come back and I could say, okay, has your memory been refreshed, or has your recollection been refreshed? And they'll say, yeah. And then I can ask them the question. It's kind of like a formality, but, they make us do it. So hopefully that answered the question.
Shelley has a question.
Yes,
Can you ask Bob?
If religious leaders can refuse to give statements, please, like a priest that had heard a confession. It's an interesting question. I mean, there is kind of a privilege with that. I don't know that it reaches to the level of like attorney-client privilege. I think in terms of, I think that they could go up there and refuse to answer it. What's the guy doing? Poor guy.
Somebody yawned.
See, is he out?
I don't know.
The dog was making plaintive noises down there. That's how he talks. So there's not a pat answer for it. It's jurisdictionally. I've seen it where, like in the Drew Peterson, the cop wife killer that trial that took place here in Chicago with the sleazy Bolingbrook cop that was leching on young girls at like disco teens, they're like a teen discos, and like killed his first wife. He is convicted of it now, but they originally had called it a accidental death, that she had slipped in the tub. When his next wife went missing, they're like, you know what? We're going to exhume that body and take a second look at it. And so but in that case, Stacy Peterson, who has still never been found, he's still never been tried for that case. She had gone and talked to a priest about a couple of things, and she had told the priest, look, if I ever go missing, it's because Drew Peterson did something to me. So, they were able to, he broke his priest. Like, I don't know if they call it a privilege, but he broke it and he testified at that trial. So it's different. It's much more difficult trying to get an attorney, unless we are made aware of a crime that's going to be happening in the future, in which case we have an obligation. But in terms of anything that happened in the past, it's privileged and we can't break privilege. Otherwise you get the thing that you had with Jodi Arias and her lawyer. And he was willing to come out, he ended up getting disbarred for it. And I'm talking about Kirk Nurmi. And, but like, he just could not abide by like her lying about all kinds of shit. And he was like, you know what? I'm good. It's like I'm going to have Kirk on at some point. I've been messaging him because it's interesting. It's like he had his moral compass led the way for him. You know what I mean? So, and it was a huge sacrifice. So I've always kind of like, I've never considered him to be disgraced, cause that's a big give for him in order to kind of clear the air in terms of a client and shit that she's saying that was not truthful, that he knew was not truthful. And, so hopefully that answers the question, kind of.
All right, very Bob, you see the new I got a little new stickers here. First of all, Mandy, if you see I've got a new
I love that
GFW
with the
logo.
shaming a J underneath it.
Yeah, and then but look at the bottom left, Bob. Look at the bottom left. Look at the over the screen or
Hey, I
You got
love
a
that.
Step
Step Brothers.
which
It's
Mandy
the
also
best.
made. Mandy, you rock. All right,
It's
let's
so
go.
good.
Not stay with us in November was in regards to.
That was in regards to the letter found on the Chad's device, and then also another what is a KK Walker email where Chad was being requested to come to Houston. I believe those were the two.
And one of the emails referenced him being in Arizona the previous November.
Correct.
And that would have been November of 2018.
Correct.
And there's also a response there from Lori saying she's friends with Tammy.
Yes.
Did you also review data in relation to devices or accounts linked to Lori Vallow?
I did.
In your review of those, did you find any communications between Lori and Tammy?
I did not.
Any indication that they were friends in those devices, at least?
No.
Did you find communications between Lori and Chad?
I did.
And on this next slide, can you talk a little bit about what we're seeing here and then read it into the record?
So once again, in Charles Vallow's actual phone extraction, the day of his murder, and these text messages take place between 7:35 a.m. and 7:37 a.m. between Charles and Adam Cox, who was Lori's brother. Charles sent Adam a text, "Al is here." Adam responded, "At Lori's?" Adam responds, "Really? I wonder why he never called me back." Adam responds, "They're planning something." Charles responded, "Absolutely." Adam responded, "I was supposed to spend the night at his house last night. She probably blocked that." Charles responds, "What you do is up to you."
And up until this slide, or actually, excuse me, just the slide before this, we're talking the beginning of July when he and Lori are exchanging those messages. Is that correct?
So from June 29th was when that letter was discovered and the communication starts. So up until then, yeah, or from that day on, yes.
And you indicated this is the day that Charles is killed when these messages are exchanged.
Yes, it was.
And again, Adam Cox is one of Lori's brothers,
Yes,
and he was not a suspect, correct?
correct.
And when we look at the time that these are exchanged, it's early in the morning.
Yes.
Were there any additional communications on Charles' phone after this?
There were not.
Charles was shot and killed shortly after these messages were exchanged.
Correct.
And we've talked a little bit about that you reviewed. And actually, I apologize. I'll get this submitted to the court first. And we've already discussed a little bit that as part of your investigation, you also reviewed some accounts associated with Lori Vallow.
Yes.
Did those include some iCloud accounts?
Two of them were, yes.
And do you recall what those iCloud accounts were?
So the first iCloud account that Lori used was Lori 4 style, the number 4. So Lori, the number 4 style at iCloud.com. And from that extraction or from that information, we were able to determine a second iCloud that was created, which is lollytime at iCloud.com.
And in reviewing and specifically looking to that Lori for style, was there a significant amount of information located on that device?
Yes, there was.
Excuse me, on that account or linked to it?
Yes, there is.
And from that information, and then also same question with the lolly time, was there a significant amount of information?
Yes,
And in preparation for your testimony today, did you prepare an exhibit?
I did.
And does that exhibit pull some of the information that caught your attention?
Yes, it does.
And given the amount of information within those accounts, do you believe that it would aid you in your testimony today?
It sure would.
Do you believe it would aid the jury in understanding the evidence as well?
Yes, it would.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask that the witness be shown State's Exhibit 48. I believe defense has a copy as well. Actual jump drive, but as a courtesy, we printed these out.
Okay. We'll admit the exhibit, noting again, the actual exhibit's a PowerPoint XLS digital file, and what the court's reviewed is a print-off version of that.
And does that appear to be an accurate representation of the PowerPoint?
It does.
Thank you. Your Honor, now that it's been admitted, the state would ask to publish.
You may publish it.
And you talked about the first iCloud account. What are we seeing on this particular slide?
So on this particular slide, I'm showing you the Lori Forstyle at iCloud.com account name, username. Under this account, these 4 numbers are registered under that account.
And as you went through the account, is that where you located these numbers?
Yes,
And so these are numbers that ended up being associated with Lori Vallow, is that correct?
that is correct.
And looking at the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here and then read the messages into the record?
Yes, so on the iCloud account, Lori Forstyle, the following messages were seen between Lori Vallow and Alex Cox. On 3/9/2019 at 11:27 hours, Lori sent Alex a text that says, apparently it is tied to Ned being gone. There's an emoji in there, but the emoji is not included. Hopefully today or tomorrow. On 3/10/2019 at 8:41 in the morning, Alex sent Lori a message. Love you too. Have fun and get rid of Ned already. 3/26/2019 at 17:36 hours, Alex sent Lori a message. Ned is still alive, just confirmed. 3/26/2019 at 18:17 or 6:17 p.m., Lori sends Alex a message. It's not Ned, and it's a new one.
What about those messages caught your attention?
So in the weeks and months following the death of Charles Vallow, we received information that Charles was possibly killed by Alex because he was a dark spirit or a zombie. The name Ned is a name that even Charles would tell people that Lori was referring to him as. So the name Ned is the dark spirit's name that was given to Charles Vallow.
And in that last message, we see reference to it's not Ned, it's a new one. Did you learn anything in relation to what that message may have been referencing?
To me, and
Judge, I'm going to object. That calls for speculation.
Jay, could
Also
you
stand
imagine if Shans just started calling you Ned?
Through
Hey,
the
Ned.
investigation,
No. First of all, I would immediately just saying Oakley Dokley and all the Ned Flair.
Oakley dokley.
But I would be like, what the fuck is going on? But again, that's exactly what Charles did. He was like, what the fuck is going on? He told people, and unfortunately, it's so sad. There
Oh
was
my
like
God.
nothing he could freaking do, man.
Could you imagine like
You were-
people just not buying what you're selling? Like when you're
Right.
like
You're trying to.
absolutely it's crazy. Jay, I don't
It
want to
really
gross
is.
you out, but I'm eating radishes.
Radishes? Just radishes?
Well, I'm dipping it in a nice little hummus and sriracha dip I made.
I do like hummus. I'll give you that, but not radishes.
Proceed.
Actually, I'd have to try them. I haven't tried
They're
a radish,
delicious.
I don't think.
Really?
No, I don't think so.
Interesting.
Radishes with hummus. I'll have to give it a shot.
reviewed
I usually go with
other
pretzels
phone
or
records.
Yes.
A
And
nice,
did you discuss
chip.
the investigation with other
A
individuals
lot of
involved
radish
in it?
lovers in the
Yes.
chat.
And did you review reports and interviews?
Yes.
And based on your review of that through your investigation, were you able to make a determination as to what that may have been referencing?
Yes.
Judge, and I'm going to renew my objection that it's speculation.
And Your Honor, if I may respond?
Go ahead, Ms. Blake.
Your Honor, I think under the collective knowledge doctrine, the officer's already established that if he can answer from his investigation what he believed it to mean, and it in relation to, although I haven't heard it, any hearsay, I think under the collective knowledge doctrine, it's not being offered for the truth of the matter. It's being offered as to what the officer determined in the investigation.
All right. Well, if you're, go ahead, Mr. Pryor.
May I respond?
Jay, can I explain what the
Judge,
collective knowledge doctrine is real quick?
Yes, go for it.
So basically, collective knowledge doctrine allows for one cop to testify, typically within the same department, to testify what other cops in that department may or may not know, pursuant to their report. So that's what allows one cop to testify to something that another cop may have actually handled the call and may have actually been there and dealt with it. That collective knowledge doctrine, because they're all in the same department and they're all working the case together, they have a collective knowledge. So it's an exception and it allows them to do it typically.
Yeah, we kind of touched on it, but like in Delphi, since like there seems to be a problem with like what, a couple particular investigators that they might want to call someone else with collective knowledge because they did such a, their shit is so fucked up. But that's really interesting. So yeah.
Oh, and I asked Allie, so it's about the clerical thing or the clergy. So as to like the clergy member can't necessarily, there is a privilege for it, and the clergy member can't say, oh, well, I've got privilege, but like say for instance, the defendant in the case had said something, they went into a confessional, said something to the clergy member, and then the state's trying to call the clergy member to the stand. The defendant can say, okay, well, I had privilege, that was a privileged conversation. So it's not the clergy member themselves that can say, oh, I'm privileged, but it's the person that they're going to be talking about that made a confession or a statement to them that can claim the privilege. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yes, that makes sense. Thank you, Al.
Always, dude.
Using that notion that it's as part of the investigation, it still calls for this officer to make a guess as to exactly what is meant by a particular phrase. So regardless of the investigation, regardless of whether he's looked at documents, he's still guessing. He's speculating, he's hunching, and he's not able to do that, and he's not allowed to do that.
All right. Well, there's been some additional foundation laid. At this point, I am still going to continue to sustain the objection, just looking back at the question, which was whether or not the witness was able to make a determination as to what that may have been referencing. So I do think it's speculative at this point, Ms. Blake. Any additional foundation you could lay may change that.
Through your investigation, did you learn if Charles was designated by any other names?
Yes.
And what were those names?
Garrett and Hiplos.
And based on that, what was your belief with regard to it's a new one?
A new entity or a new dark spirit.
Amy P says radishes taste like dirt.
And looking at this next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here and then read the messages into the record?
So on the Lori for Style account, you see messages between Nicole Earl and Lori Vallow. These took place on 10/19 of 2019. At 9:18 in the morning, Nicole sent Lori a message. I'm not sure if you heard, but Chad's wife died last night. Lori responded at 9:33 a.m. Oh my gosh, I did not hear that. I'm in Hawaii and it's 6 a.m. Lori responded to Nicole at 9:34 in the morning. Do you know what happened? Nicole responded to Lori at 9:37. Yes, she awoke in the night coughing, threw up, collapsed, and passed away.
Through your investigation, did you learn on what day Tammy Daybell was pronounced dead?
Yes.
And what day was that?
October 19th, 2019.
So the same day these messages are exchanged.
Yes.
And we talked before that as you were looking through these, you were also cognizant of some other active investigations.
Correct.
Did you pass this information along to other law enforcement?
Yes.
And looking at the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here and then read it into the record?
Once again, these are messages between Melanie Gibb and Lori Vallow on the Lori for Style account on 10/19/2019. Melanie Gibb sent Lori a message at 1:16 p.m. I heard what happened to Chad's wife. Oh my gosh. Lori responded to Melanie at 1:18. Hello, what?
So on that last slide, we saw communications between Lori and Nicole Earl that took place in the morning hours of October 19th, correct?
Yes, correct.
And now on this slide, later in the day, these are messages between Melanie Gibb and Lori Vallow.
Yes.
Hey, Team Dirt, I
And
don't
what
think
did these,
you're
what was
rinsing
it
your
about these
radishes
messages that
enough.
caught your
Like,
attention?
you really have to rinse a radish.
What caught my attention
I
is
mean, it's
this,
a
the
root.
communication
It's a
between
root.
Melanie
There's
Gibb
going to be
and
dirt.
Lori
You're not-
Vallow,
you're not
indicating that
rinsing
Lori
them properly.
was unaware that Tammy had passed away.
And that's even though there were the messages with Nicole.
But I got a poll on my YouTube, which is it just says radishes delicious or dirt. Right now, it's 52% dirt, 48%. Oh, now it's even 50-50 delicious and dirt. But by the way, before I forget, Bob, I don't know if you've done it yet, but don't forget you have like the 10 free memberships you can give. I don't know if you've done
Oh my God. Yeah.
for the month.
Explain that to me. Like, how do I
So
do
you
that
just gotta-
again?
Just go into your channel as if you're like watching it like regularly, and then
Okay.
go pause it so we don't. Well, I'm running, so you don't have to worry about that. But go to the like the money sign, and it should be the
Yeah.
bottom thing, membership gifting. You can give out like 5 at a time.
Oh, boom. I'm about
There
to
you go.
do, I'm going to gift 5 right now. 5 lucky kids about to get gifted. Boop. Let's see who it is.
Get your memberships, folks.
It's
Get
like,
your membership.
It's like Jay's like wheel of fortune. That's exciting to see.
Boom. There we got some law students. Nice.
Asazen, Renee, Ganuk, Mia. Oh, Mia Beato. I love it. Rebecca Ann. Love it. And Brandy's. Welcome, y'all.
Welcome all the new folks.
I love it. Thanks for
Earl
reminding me
earlier in the
about that,
day.
Jay.
Yes.
You got it. I almost forgot myself.
I always forget about that.
And on the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing and then read it into the record?
So on the Lori for Style account, on November 22nd, 2019, a text message is present from Lori Vallow to Colby Ryan, who is Lori's son. I text Ty to send it, but I haven't heard back yet. She will probably just do it before she tells me. Hope you got the Venmo. Ty said she sent it late. I'll call you when I get a break. Hope you're having a great day. I love you so much.
And in this message, were you, based on your investigation, did you know who Ty was that they were referring to?
Yes.
And who was that?
Tylee Ryan.
Did you learn when the last known sighting of Tylee was?
I believe it was the beginning of September 2019.
So this message is sent months after the last known sighting.
Yes.
And then you had indicated you also looked at another iCloud account.
Yes. So from the Lori for Style account led us to the lollytime@icloud.com. This information provided indicated that this particular account was created on July 1st, 2019. And the cell phone numbers
Beats. Where's the right fruit?
listed
Those
are the
things
numbers
taste like
that are
dirt.
attached to that account.
Big red balls of dirt.
So this particular account was created just 10 days before Charles is killed.
Yes.
And again, during this time, Tammy is still alive. Is that correct?
Yes.
Turning to the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here and then read it into the record?
Yes, this is communication found on this iCloud account between Lori Vallow and Alex Cox. On July 9th, 2019 at 1:49 p.m., Lori sent Alex a message stating, "So the plot thickens. Call me when you can." She sends another message to another message to Alex Cox, 7/9/2019 at 9:50 p.m. "Getting sleepy, so I'm going to need you to stay close to me the next couple days. Mel too. She can't go to Utah. They are planking some kind of intervention, but want Mel out of the way, so I'm left alone. I need to come get the stuff at your house tomorrow and secure it. Lots to do. Thank you for standing by me. It's all coming to a head this week. I will be like Nephi, I am told, and so will you."
And when these messages are copied over, do you copy them over as written?
Yes, I do.
So some may contain spelling errors,
Correct.
and the only difference is you did not include the emojis.
Correct.
What is it about these messages that stuck out to you?
This is 2 days before Charles would have died. Also, in looking at Charles Vallow's account, Charles was talking with Adam Cox about planning some sort of intervention, if you would, and talking to Lori about her radical beliefs and the letters that he had found. So this stood out to me as some sort of plan that was taking place.
And again, this is just 2 days before Alex shoots and kills Charles Vallow.
Yes.
Were you able to determine who the Mel is that's being referenced in that second text?
That is Melanie Boudreau.
And who is she in relation to Lori Vallow?
That is Lori's niece.
And then moving to the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here and then read the messages into the record?
So what you're seeing here is oftentimes in what appears in an iCloud, or what doesn't appear in an iCloud, you can capture in an actual phone record. Phone records and phone extractions are different. Phone extraction it's a copy of the actual device, where a phone record or a phone, they call them call detail records, are actual phone calls, text messages that are sent, and records are retained by the actual phone carrier. So in looking at a timeline of Charles Vallow's death, I was able to look at Lori Vallow's phone call detail records, and I noticed that there were phone or messages, text messages between Lori and Chad the day of Charles Vallow's murder. The times are at 6:12 a.m., 7:01 a.m., and 7:33 a.m. There's a record that this text occurred, but there's no content of what the actual text is.
And through your investigation, were you able to determine a span of time in which you believe Charles Vallow to have been shot?
Yes.
And when was that?
Based on our investigation,
Mandy just broke my heart.
you look at the record of Adam Cox and the last message.
No, bananas. But I even like bananas, and I'm like a
Bananas are
3-year-old.
delicious.
By,
Oh my God,
Chad
they're
and
so
Adam,
good.
7:37.
Perfectly ripe banana.
So he
the most
arrives
delicious
at the
thing I've ever
residence based on location data on Chad's phone.
And sorry to interrupt. I think you said Chad's phone. Do you mean
I
Charles?
apologize. On Charles' phone. So Charles Vallow had location data on his phone, so it shows when he arrives. So it's around that 7:30 time frame that Charles arrived at the Four Peaks address, and then obviously the
Brooklyn.
call placed by
Not you too.
by Alex Cox at 8:36 indicating the shot. So somewhere between the 7:30 and 8:30 timeframe.
Right, Baba Ganoush's eggplant. How can you like
And so
bananas
these
and
messages with
eggplant are-
Chad are essentially stopped just before Charles arrives or around the same time.
Correct.
Scarlett hates bananas.
And then turning to the next slide,
Day of my life.
can you tell us what we're seeing here and then read them into the record?
So these are text messages between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, and the text messages were on July 18th, 2019. Lori sent Chad a message. I just got the letter from the insurance company saying that I am not the beneficiary. It's a spear through my heart. Who do you think he changed it to? Brandon or probably Kay? He left nothing for JJ. Chad responded to Lori, wow, that's terrible. There's no way to find out? Lori responded to Chad, I might be able to see when I get his computer on Sunday. I could check the emails sent to the insurance company. It will show change of beneficiary. He must have done it recently. Chad sent Lori a message. It seemed you would have had to agree to the change. Maybe your name was forged. You should have a good paper trail to prove it.
And then going to the next slide, is this a continuation of that conversation?
Yes, it is.
Would you please read those into the record?
Chad sent Lori a message stating, I love you. This is terrible, but it is probably another step in bringing down the Gadiantons, especially Brandon. Lori sent Chad a message to Chad. Nope, he can change it anytime he wants. He's the agent and anyone can change their beneficiary anytime with their own signature.
I'm just going to pause this real quick. I just have to say, this is one of my favorite things about our chats, Bob. I mean, we watch serious stuff, but like we can like you bring up the rashes. We have gone fully off the rails in the chat. We're talking about bananas and Baba Ganoush,
Bananas and hummus and
completely off the
radishes,
rails.
beets. I love it. It's so good. It's so good.
You guys are the
But
best.
I'm thinking
no
about
banana scheming. No banana scheming.
No.
Don't you banana scheme in here.
Don't do it.
you
Don't try
banana
it.
scheme in here.
Oh,
Coconut. Exactly.
Chad sent
Coconut
a
is
message to
people
Lori.
either love it or hate it. There's no
It
in
will be
between.
interesting if it got changed after he had 2 bullets in his chest.
So these messages were exchanged just 7 days after Charles was shot and killed.
Correct.
What was it about these messages that stood out to you?
Obviously, what stood out is the Lori's concern with beneficiary money from a life insurance policy
Peanut butter,
that she felt
bananas, and
was coming
mayo
to her
sandwiches.
after
No.
Charles's death.
And at the time these messages were exchanged, had Arizona publicly released how, or if you recall, had they released how Charles had been killed?
I don't recall.
But it's just 7 days after.
Correct.
And the indication to you was at the time Charles was killed, Lori would have believed she was getting insurance money.
Yes.
Did it also appear Chad would have believed that?
Judge objection calls for speculation.
Sustain.
Looking at the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here and read it into the record?
So this is another message on the Lori Lolly time, I believe. Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell, 7/18/2019 at 12:19 hours. Lori says, so I talked to the insurance company. He changed it in March. So it was probably Ned before we got rid of him. They can't tell me to who, of course, but it's done. I still get the $4,000 a month from SS.
Did you learn through your investigation what the SS stood for?
Yes.
And what was that?
Social Security.
And did you learn through the investigation whether or not Lori was getting Social Security money or if her kids were?
Yes, she was. Yes.
And looking at this next one, can you tell us what we're seeing here and read it into the record?
This is a message from Chad to Lori on 7/26/2019 at 8:13 p.m. Tonight I figured out who I feel like. I'm a grown-up version of Harry Potter who has to live with the Dudleys in his little space under the stairs. Every few weeks I get to escape and have amazing adventures with my goddess lover. But then I have to return to my place under the stairs feeling trapped, but I sense permanent freedom is coming.
And this
Did Chad just say he's like a grown-up fucking Harry Potter?
message would have been just 15 days after Charles' death.
Yes,
And was Tammy Daybell still alive at this time?
yes.
And then turning to the next message, if you could let us know what we're seeing here and then read it into the record.
So on 7/30/2019, Chad sent a message to Lori. An SMS message is just a text message that read, I got the inspiration to go back to my original death percentages that help us track Charles, Ned, etc. Tammy is very close. Her percentage has fallen steadily since Hiplos left. It is encouraging.
And through your investigation, I think you've already talked to us about it, but did you learn who Ned and Hiplos were referring to?
Yes.
And who was that?
And those were dark spirits that Ned and Hiplos and Garrett were dark spirit names referring to Charles Vallow.
And in this, there's reference to helped us, correct?
That's what I see, yes.
And this was from Chad to Lori?
Yes.
And then on this next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here and then read it into the record?
So on this account was a text messages between Alex Cox and Lori Vallow, September 3rd, 2019 at 10:02 a.m. Alex to Lori, network name is anti-layman. PW is too many kids. Lori to Alex, funny.
And through the investigation, did you learn the last known sighting of Tylee was around September 8th?
Correct.
And the last known sighting of JJ was around September 22nd?
Correct.
And this message was sent on September 3rd?
Yes, it was.
So when the kids were still around?
Yes.
Your Honor, that exhibit is ready to be submitted to the court.
Very well. Thank you, Ms. Blake.
As part of your investigation, did you also review content from an individual named Zulema Pastenis's phone?
Yes, I did.
And you've already referenced and talked about looking into content on Lori's iCloud accounts, correct?
Correct.
And we just saw some of that.
Yes.
In looking at Zulema's phone and some of the iCloud accounts, did you end up creating another exhibit?
I did, yes.
And again, given was the content of Zulema's phone voluminous?
It was, yes.
And were you able to determine certain messages that you felt had evidentiary or that you felt were relevant to today's proceedings?
I did.
Do you believe that they would assist you in your testimony today?
Yes,
Do you believe they would assist the jury in understanding the evidence as well?
they would.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask that the witness be shown State's Exhibit 51. And similar to the last, these are printouts of a PowerPoint presentation. The actual exhibit would be a jump drive.
Very well.
Detective Duncan, would you just look through those?
Okay.
Do those appear to be an accurate representation of the PowerPoint you created?
They are.
Your Honor, the state would move for admission of State's Exhibit 51.
No objection, Judge.
All right, Exhibit 51 is admitted, and again, that is the digital file on the thumb drive. The court has received a printed copy as well.
And backing up a little bit, in your investigation, because we've used the name Zulema Pastenis.
Yes.
Through your investigation, did you learn who Zulema Pastenis is?
Yes, through our investigation, we learned that Zulema Pastenis was a friend of Lori Vallow.
And do you know if Zulema Pastenis eventually was married to someone related to Lori?
She was. Eventually, she would marry Alex Cox.
And we talked a little bit about Ned and dark spirits. Did those kind of things come up through your investigation?
Yes, they did.
And in looking in Zulema's phone, was there reference to things of that nature?
Yes, there were.
Your Honor, I would ask permission to publish State's Exhibit 51.
You may.
Yes, so on
This slide, can you tell us what we're seeing and then read it into the record?
Yes, so on Zulema Pastenis' phone, an extraction that was actually done by the Gilbert Police Department. I reviewed this phone content and I saw messages between Lori and Zulema. So on May 29th, 2019 at 10:32 a.m., Lori sent Zulema a message that read, "Perfect. I found out there are 4. One is a level 4 entity. His name is Hiplos. The H is silent. The other 3 are level 3s. Let's do this." And the following message from Lori to Zulema, June 2nd, 2019 at 11:54 a.m. "Yes, it does. Let's put some fire energy towards Hiplos now. He is driving now, and today is the day. I can do it spiritually. Let's go to him and hover over the truck till we do it. Are you ready?"
And looking at the next slide, if you could tell us what we're seeing here and read these messages into the record.
So the messages continue. July 2nd, 2019 at 7:52 p.m. Zulema sends Lori a message that states, "Also, I was given instructions today to rip, tear, or burn the aura of Hiplos to let the body energy out so he can't re-enter." There's a message from Chad Daybell to Zulema on July 2nd, 2019 at 8:35 p.m. "I am very happy to find out these estates. You and Lolo have doing amazing work. Mother Earth is so grateful to you both. Thank you as well for your help with Hiplos. He is so very close." Chad then sends another message to Zulema on July 13th, 2019 at 9:57 a.m. "Hi, Zulema. Yes, I would be happy to give you a blessing, possibly this evening or tomorrow. It's crazy about Charles, but such a relief."
So in looking at that second message from Chad Daybell, there's a reference to Lolo. Did you determine who Lolo was in your investigation?
I did.
And who is that?
Lolo is a nickname for Lori Vallow.
Was there anything else that stood out about that message in relation to your investigation?
On the message, the second message?
Yes, the second message.
That Chad was thanking Zulema for her help with this evil spirit that Charles was referred to.
And this message was sent just 9 days before Charles Vallow was killed?
Yes.
And then looking at the next message, is there anything that stood out to that one about you?
Other than the last sentence, It is crazy about Charles, but such a relief.
Had you looked through these phones and iCloud accounts? Did you ever see any indication of grief over the loss of Charles by anyone?
I did not.
And then turning to this next slide, I think you've already talked about the KK Walker. Can you tell us what we're seeing here, though?
Yes. So this is a email that came that we recovered from the kkwalker75@yahoo.com address. And this particular email was sent from KK Walker to chad.daybell@gmail.com on April 21st, 2019 at 6:20 a.m. Yes, April 21st, 2019. So the email reads, "Dear Brother Daybell, hi, this is Karen from Vallow. I contacted you a couple weeks ago to see if you would be willing to come speak to our youth here in Houston, Texas. You said you probably could if there was a way to cover your expenses. Since then, I can't shake the feeling that you need to come share your story, particularly about chasing paradise. We are near the Houston Temple, and this summer our stake is focusing on family history work. My reason for contacting you again is that we have a stake youth conference planned for all day on Saturday, April 27th. The focus is on the temple, and I know you would energize the kids with your stories. We expect about 400 kids to attend, including some parents. I know it is extremely short notice, but is there any chance you could come? A high councilman is currently the main speaker, but he said he would be happy to let you speak instead. My husband and I have been financially blessed and would pay for your flight. We also have a casita attached to our house where you could stay and not be bothered. Also, my daughter mentioned the young single adults would love to put together a fireside on Sunday evening. I realize your main goal is to sell books, and that wouldn't be possible at these events, but I know the interest in your novels would skyrocket here. I'm sorry it's so late. If possible, please let me know as early as possible in the morning so we can include it in the Sunday announcements. Also, we'd want to get your flights booked. If you are able to do both events, we could fly you in Friday, then depart on Monday. Please let me know if this is possible. We would love it. Karen Walker."
And again, who did you link that KK Walker Yahoo to?
So the KK Walker was linked to Lori Vallow. The information provided by Yahoo indicated that the IP address where this account was set up was in Katy, Texas, near where Lori was living at the time. The date of birth associated with the account was a variation of Lori's date of birth, but the phone number linked to the account was the same phone number that Lori would use.
And again, the date on this is April 21st of 2019. Was Charles Vallow still alive at that time?
Yes, he was.
And was Tammy Daybell still alive?
Yes.
Did Chad Daybell respond to this email?
Yes, he did.
And if we look at the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here?
This is a response to that email obtained through Yahoo. "Hello, Karen. Yes, I will be able to come, so let the wards know. I can talk to you later about arranging the flight, Chad."
And through your investigation, did you learn whether or not Chad did travel to this event, or in response to this email, I should say?
I don't have independent knowledge of whether he did or not.
Did you, in fact, pass your findings along to other law enforcement?
Yes, I did.
And other law enforcement may have followed up on that?
Yes.
And Your Honor, this exhibit is ready for submission to the court.
All right.
And did about a call. Duncan, do you recall being contacted about a call placed to a mortuary?
I do.
And do you recall who contacted you?
Yeah, it was Agent Ricky Wright with the FBI.
And did you end up following up on a call made to a mortuary?
I did.
Did you learn where that mortuary was located?
Yes.
And where was that?
This is the Valley of Sun Mortuary located in the southern portion of Chandler, Arizona.
And did you end up recovering a copy of a recording of the call?
Yes, I did.
And was it actually a two-part recording?
Yes.
And Your Honor, it's my understanding that these exhibits have already been stipulated to by the parties. They've been marked as states 44A and states 45A.
That's correct, Judge.
Okay. And to be clear, explain what they are again, Ms. Blake.
They are a recording of the calls just referenced by the detective.
Okay, so each one of those exhibits contains a digital file of a recording individual.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. 44A and 45A are admitted.
And Your Honor, I do have a copy of those for counsel as well.
Judge, I have copies. Thank you.
Okay.
And I would, now that those are admitted, I would ask to be able to publish those.
You may publish them.
If I may have just one moment, Your Honor.
You today. Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm assisting them with their calls. How can I help you today?
We just had a death in the family, and we really don't want anything but a cremation, and then to send the cremains to a family in Louisiana. Just a simple, nothing other than a cremation and sending him to his family for a service in Louisiana. So, is there any way to know a ballpark price on that?
Yes, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Okay, let me transfer you over to the director who can assist you with the pricing.
Oh, thanks.
Chad
What is your
Daybell.
name, please?
Here's brilliance is on display here when he comes up
Chad
with a fake name.
Daybell.
How do you spell the last name, please?
Dabal. Daybell.
Daybell.
How are you related to the person who passed?
Oh my God, what a fucking idiot.
I'm his nephew.
And then also, this is for the Valley of the Suns in Chandler, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, he lives there in Chandler. I live in Iowa, so I'm just trying to help out.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yes, what is your uncle's name for reference, please?
He is John Daybell.
And last name?
Well, Dabal.
Okay.
The same. John.
Do you have a middle name?
Myron.
Myron?
Yeah.
And Chad, what is your phone number in case we get disconnected?
Yeah. This number 515. I don't actually know my own number.
What a fucking idiot. What a dope.
Let me look real quick.
Thank you.
Can you tell me what your most reasonably priced receptacle is for cremains, please?
515
Chad Daybell.
0143.
I don't know my own number. Sorry.
Thank
Hold
you.
on
Is he
one
at a
second.
nursing home, hospital, or residence?
He passed away in a hospital. I don't know the details. I'm just calling.
Yeah, it's just for to know, because sometimes it's different if it's a residential or hospital or a nursing home. Okay.
Thinking they're sending him to the medical examiner. I'm not sure. I should have had more information before I called. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Except I'm a very stupid
Alright,
man, so you'll
cremation.
have to forgive me.
With shipping. To which
It reminds me of one of the great, in my opinion, opinion, greatest bits on The Simpsons. I don't know if you remember this, Bob. There's an episode where I think Mr. Burns saves Bart's life, like he gives him blood or something. But before he does that, Homer sends him this letter because he's pissed. I forget what it is. He's pissed at him, so he sends him a letter cursing him out. And then Mr. Burns ends up giving his money, so he has to go get the letter from the post office. So he walks up to the post office and he goes, "Hello. My name is Mr. Burns. I believe you have a letter for me." And the guy's like, "Okay, Mr.
episode.
Burns, what's your first name?" "I don't know." Like, that's Chad, man.
Dude, that is a great episode.
New Orleans.
I would play it, but I would get a copyright.
Okay, one moment, please, Chad. But stay on the line. Let me transfer you over to the director who can assist you with that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Chad.
Yeah.
Thank you for holding. I do have the director, Carissa, on the line to further assist you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
The most significant part is that he lies about who he is. Like, if he didn't, this guy was murdered, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
And Your Honor, that was State's Exhibit 44A.
Okay.
And I would now ask to publish State's Exhibit 45A.
You may.
Shannon, you haven't heard me say the storm yet? Oh boy. Wait for it. Wait for it.
Suicide is on Mortuary Cemetery. I understand that your uncle passed away.
Yes, and I'm just starting the process for the family. He didn't have many relatives. I'm his nephew. I live in Iowa. But what they want to do is, it's sad to see him go. Yeah, I think he's going to the medical examiner. I don't know all the details, but what the family basically wants is just to have him cremated there in Chandler and then have its cremains shipped to New Orleans. And we'll deal with the service later. So just trying to get a ballpark price.
Okay, so for a cremation, we are able to do our cremation for $1,695. Now, what that's going to include is the transportation into our care, the transportation to and from our crematory, our basic professional fees, as well as our crematory fee. Now, there's going to be a couple other charges there for you. So we are going to have death certificates, which are $20 a piece, with a processing fee. A $15 permit fee. And then we're able to do that transfer through the mail for you, and that's $150 fee for you.
Okay, can you add those numbers up for me?
Like UPS or something, I guess.
Okay.
Ooh.
So close to about 2,000 probably, kind of a ballpark, yeah.
You're searching.
Okay. Well, that helps me a lot. I'm going to call one or two others, but I'll get back to you if we come that direction. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. If you need anything else, give me a call.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, and by the way, you're only slightly on the darkness scale because of your courtesy. Thank you, ma'am.
I mean, the argument can be made he's hiding his identity because he's having an affair with.
Sidebar with counsel, please.
Yes.
That's what Pryor's like getting at. Like, like Pryor's trying to, like, oh, this is an affair. Everything was just trying to him hiding the affair. It's all just because of the affair.
All right, counsel, we had a
anybody
sidebar just
worried?
discussing scheduling here. We're going to go ahead and take the lunch break at this time. I am going to advise the jurors, you're going to have a slightly longer lunch break, maybe not slightly, probably more like an hour and a half than an hour based on some motions the court's going to hear outside of your presence during part of that break. So we'll probably have you returning for further evidence, hopefully around 1:30. And if we do that, I'll also inquire as to whether or not you think we could just go through 2 hours without an afternoon break, potentially, if we start up around 1:30. So,
Oh, shit.
And I
So
believe
much
the
for
state
them
can do so as
stopping at
long as the
1.
jurors are good with it.
okay, I'll ask the jurors once you return back so we kind of know what
Joey's
is
dream,
left in the
Jay.
afternoon after that.
It
So
was-
we will
were
go ahead and
close.
take
We
our
were
lunch
close.
recess at this time. I'll have the jurors be excused and we'll argue a brief motion after they've been excused from the courtroom.
Ooh, let's see
All
what the
right.
motion is.
Is he behind time at all?
Can you please? For those
He's a
in the
little bit
courtroom in
behind.
attendance, you're welcome to stay for a motion hearing. You're also welcome to leave for the lunch break if you'd prefer to do that. It's a motion that we're going to just hear an argument at this time, whether or not it will be open or closed hearing. So
Oh.
if anybody does want to leave for the
Sealing-
lunch break, you're
sealing
welcome to.
motion they're going to
Otherwise,
argue.
we'll proceed under this rule 32.
You go, Angie. Get those red eye. Red
Thank
eye. Red eye
We'll have
for
the witness step
lunch.
down and return to. Sorry, I lost track of you still sitting up
The
there.
poor detective they left him up there. Didn't even.
What are they trying to see up?
Here, I'll show you.
15th by
this is
state.
Lori.
It was filed on shortened notice just
He's in
yesterday. I haven't expected defense counsel to be able to have time to make any filing in response. However, I've allowed Mr. Pryor an opportunity to review the motion and would permit oral argument. That hearing we're going to take up later after our lunch break. The question right now is the state did file this with a request for an expedited hearing, which I'm granting and having that heard on the merits today. Also under a motion requesting that the motion in limine be sealed. The court is holding a hearing at this time to determine on the state's motion whether or not the hearing will be sealed or will it be open.
Right?
And so that's governed by our Idaho
Jury's
Court
open.
Administrative
Why do they
Rules
have to seal anything?
32. If the state
Yeah.
wants to present any
Bullshit.
argument as to a basis for sealing the hearing this afternoon, I'll hear that at
Jury's
this
in
time,
panel.
and then I'll
This
hear a
should be
response
open.
from the defense. So who is going to be arguing as to the motion to seal?
I will be, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Ms. Blake. And so to be clear, not into the merits
Welcome
of
back,
the motion
Mel.
in limine,
Jane
just
and I
on
are
the issue of
over
sealing.
here.
Correct. The state did file a brief. I recognize this is short timing and defense counsel may not have had an opportunity to do the same. In the brief, I think both in the motion to seal and then reference to the brief without getting into any argument lays out what the state's concern is depending on any ruling on the motion is why the state had requested that this be filed under seal. Depending on the outcome could have an impact in the future, but we do recognize that there is a jury that has been seated at this point and the court may determine that that is no longer a concern. So we would simply defer to the court on this and just reference back to the motion as to the state's rationale for the original request.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Blake. What's the defense response as to the issue of sealing or not sealing the upcoming hearing?
Judge, the state correctly pointed out that the jury's been sworn in. The evidence is has proceeded at this point. Without getting into too many factual issues, Judge, the information that's in question was listed as an exhibit and disclosed to the state on March 15th, I believe, originally in the list of exhibits and identified on that date. Then it was provided to them just before the start, a week, I think, before the start of the opening statements with the actual copy of that. So 3 weeks later now we're dealing with this. But just so everybody's clear, Judge, the information that I'm intending to use is going to be limited to impeachment. And as we all are aware, that if the information is used for impeachment, it's not necessarily admitted as evidence, but in all fairness to the state, it was provided as an exhibit. But the defense's intention is to use this solely for impeachment evidence.
All right.
So I would expect that this is nothing that needs to be sealed.
Okay, well, the court in this case has previously many times sealed certain issues relating to evidence, mostly under Idaho Court Administrative Rule 32, which is a long rule with a lot of subparts. Somewhere among in there is a paragraph E, which is kind of a catch-all that indicates that things can be sealed if it's necessary to temporarily seal or redact documents to preserve the right to a fair trial. And in this case, of course, we had quite an ordeal and undertaking to find jurors who were not prejudiced by pretrial publicity, and pretrial publicity all seemingly tilted one way in the case, where many hundreds of potential jurors were unable to serve in this case because they already had a opinion that the defendant was guilty. So avoiding that and trying to get a fair and impartial jury led to the court's orders many times before on that very issue. The issue now, where the companion case has already gone through trial, and now we have a jury seated in this case and impaneled. My concern is alleviated as to picking jurors that are not predisposed to a opinion in the case based on pretrial publicity. And so without that concern going forward, the court will determine that the hearing does not need to be sealed. And so under Rule 34, the temporarily unsealed or temporarily sealed motion will be unsealed, as well as the hearing will be conducted in an open hearing today. When we argue that motion, counsel, I don't expect it will take too long to argue, but I indicated to the jurors they'd be back around 1:30 to start evidence again. So if we call the motion at about 5 or 10 after to give us a full hour for lunch and court preparations, is that time frame going to work for the state?
That will work for the state, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. And will you be arguing that, Ms. Blake?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Pryor.
And I'll be arguing it for the defense judge.
I understand that. So for terms of timing, then let's try to get that on the record. Let's call it at 1:05. All right. We'll be in recess on the lunch break until then.
Till 1:05, Jaybird. Till 1:05.
That is 3:05 on Eastern time.
2:05 for us. So a little under an hour.
Yeah. So before I send this to the portal, I just want to let you know, guys, I have a portal for Publicly Buzzed. If you folks are following me and Bob, you may know Publicly Buzzed, but you may not. If you don't, make sure you're subscribed. Tonight he's doing a show just on what's going on with Karen Reed. You don't want to miss that. So we'll send you over to that, and then
wait, Jay, should I do the portal too? Hold on.
Yeah, I'll wait
need
for you.
To do it or okay?
Well, like if you wanted to go for your people, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. So I portal it here. Is it already? Do I already have it? Like, do you need to send me the link first?
No. If you go, so are you in your the edit settings? So go to customization and you go to add redirect. Is that where you're at?
Yeah, hold on. What I'm saying is, like, if will that link exist for me yet?
Yeah, he already set it up. Yeah, he set it up.
Oh,
like it should come up in like the options of where to go.
Oh no, like, are you portaling us to the new link for this afternoon?
No, I haven't set it up yet. I'm portaling it to Steve for tonight.
Oh yeah, for Steve-O's. Okay, yeah, I know how to do that. Okay, yeah, I can do that. I thought you were talking about portaling our people to our next link when we.
Oh no, I haven't set that up. I usually set it up right after.
Okay. All right, cool. Oh, and so trigger warning. When we were talking about the picker, the guy who was like whoever that dude was behind Hannah there. So trigger warning. This story's horrifying. So I had a guy that was in my fraternity that used to. He was a scab picker. He would pick all of his little scabs, which appeared to be like zits that he would pop, like because they were real small round things. This guy was the most disgusting human being I'd ever like. I'm like, he'd pick them, like the thing he'd pop it and then it would scab over, and then he'd pick the scab and then eat it. Dude,
Oh God.
I told you it was a trigger warning. It was the most disgusting thing. I would be like, dude, if you do that around me again, I'm seriously gonna kill you. Like you cannot do that around me. It's like I can't handle it, dude. So yeah, that's what that dude remind. Hey, I gave y'all a trigger warning.
So everyone enjoy your lunch. We're coming to lunch now.
Eat up,
Everyone enjoy your
kids. Beets, radishes, and scabs. Enjoy.
Oh, actually, let me end the poll. Let's see where it ended at. 54% delicious, 46% dirt.
Yeah.
So you won.
The
Bob.
radishes
You won.
prevail. The radishes prevail. All right, we love you guys. We'll see
Love you guys.
after
In
lunch.
like an hour about. See you guys.
See ya.